6853 Chapter 57. It's a trap. Chapter 58 It's a trap. The morning after their battle against the modified dragons found Naruto and his group sitting in a large dining hall, having breakfast with Elmenhilda and Queen Carmilla. It looked like Elmenhilda held a very high position among the vampires. Azazel was also there. However, when someone compared his presence to that of the two vampire women, he most definitely came up lacking.
At least, that was Naruto's honest opinion. I wonder when Arthur will return with Angelus, Lix, and Rule, Naruto pondered out loud as he ate his breakfast.
A lavish feast had been spread out before them. Vastly different from the traditional Japanese breakfasts he was used to, what lay on the table were a variety of dishes like yogurt, cheese, cereal, boiled eggs, herring, cold-cut meats, ham, and freshly baked bread. There was also a pot of tea and coffee, which the maids had served them.
Naruto had gone with coffee. It was bitter, but he needed to wake up.
He should be back by the end of the day, Valley said. It does take some time to reach heaven, and if what Azazel said is true, then heaven is currently in trouble. Valley paused to scoop some cereal into his mouth, chewed, swallowed, and then continued. If the situation is really bad, he might come back empty-handed. Fortunately, we do not have to worry about Sona and her peerage not showing up, Akeno interjected. I received a message from Sona saying they would arrive sometime in the late afternoon. I'm glad we can always count on Sona and her group to help us out, Naruto said.
What should we do in the meantime? Asked Asia. I don't know about you, but I'm gonna fucking relax, Rainier said as she leaned back, thrusting out her chest. All that fighting yesterday exhausted me. She looked at Asia. You should join me. We can take a bath or something.
Actually, I was thinking of doing some training, Asia admitted in a small voice. Rainier sighed. Fuck. Well, I guess I could join you. Oh, my. It seems the fallen angel has had her wings clipped, Akeno giggled. Asia has tamed you well. Shut the fuck up. Naruto didn't much care to listen to their arguing, so he turned to Irina, Revel, Kaneko, and Roswise. The four women who were a part of his harem ate by his side. They were mostly quiet. Irina and Kaneko still looked chastised from last night. Revel was humming softly to herself and seemed in good spirits. Naruto was certain she was feeling pleased by how she handled the situation last night, but Roswise was staring at him. Are you upset that you didn't get to sleep with us last night? Naruto asked.
After Revel broke up Kaneko's and Irina's argument, the four of them had gone to her bedroom and fallen asleep together. Naruto had woken up with Irina and Revel using his shoulders as pillows and Kaneko curled up on his stomach like a cat. He'd been almost uncomfortably warm. At the same time, waking up to three gorgeous women was always a pleasant experience.
No, of course not. Roswise turned her head. Are you sure? Why would I be jealous? I have no reason to be jealous. It's not like you are my boyfriend too or anything. She's jealous. Totally jealous. Naruto gave Roswise an indulgent smile, which the woman saw out of the corner of her eye. She looked away. He didn't know why, but seeing a grown woman like Roswise get jealous was an adorable sight. It made him want to tease her.
Well, if you're not jealous, then I guess we don't have to sleep together tonight. That's too bad. I was going to ask if you wanted to share my bed with me. I take it back. I am jealous. I am very jealous.
Her true colors are showing, Kaneko muttered with a frown.
Naruto-sama is always teasing Roswise, Revel added. I wonder if she brings out his sadistic side.
While Naruto joked around with Roswise and the others, his heart really wasn't into it. How could it be when Rias was still in Yami's clutches? But he tried his best to put on a brave face. He didn't want the others to worry since that would only make them more tense, which could lead to any one of them making mistakes when they finally went to rescue Rias and Kiba. Speaking of Queen Carmilla, Naruto suddenly turned to the woman hosting them. Can I ask if the vampires plan on assisting us? Of course, Queen Carmilla said. This entire matter is an issue we vampires have created, so we must also be the ones who resolve it.
How many forces can you muster for an assault on the Tepes faction? Asked Naruto. Queen Carmilla didn't answer right away, eyes turning thoughtful. Beside her, Elmenhild was staring at Naruto again, but he tried his best to pretend he didn't see her furtive glances. He didn't know what was going on with her. Right now, however, he could not afford to deal with whatever had caught her interest. We have about 5,000 vampires in total, but many of them cannot fight, Queen Carmilla said at last. I'd say only about 1,000 of us really have the ability to fight well. Of course, you saw how we fared against those modified dragons. With all of the vampires' weaknesses gone and their bodies enhanced by the Holy Grail, I fear combat against them will be difficult. Naruto couldn't help but agree. The modified dragons had definitely been tougher than your average vampire. He remembered seeing how hard it was for one normal vampire to kill one of the modified dragons. Even his own group had some issues. While they had managed to kill them all, it had been more difficult than it was to kill the Grim Reapers who attacked them during their mission to rescue Ophis. If he had to assign them a ranking, he'd say these modified dragons were a little stronger than a mid-class devil.
We'll come up with a plan to maximize your efficiency in combat. Ravel inserted herself into the conversation. She reached out for a slice of bread and continued to speak while spreading jam across it. I believe the most effective method for combating the modified dragons will be to overwhelm them with numbers. Attack with several people to overpower their defenses and you should be able to defeat them. That might be a good tactic if we weren't outnumbered, but there are at least 5 times more modified dragons than there are us, Elmenhilda said, suddenly speaking up. How can we use tactics like that if we're the ones who are outnumbered?
You bring up a good point. I'll have to think about this, Ravel said and then went silent. She ate her jam, eyes focused on nothing in particular. Naruto knew she was already in the process of trying to think up a way to use the Carmilla faction vampires in the most efficient way possible. Naruto reached out for a slice of bread, some meat, and some butter, and then made himself a sandwich. He munched on the food and pondered the situation they were in. It would be difficult to fight against so many modified dragons with just them. Maybe he should consider reverse summoning Kurama.
If you summon me at the beginning, we may not be able to use me during your confrontation with Yami. True, but I don't think we will need to worry about Yami this time. Are you sure? He is still stronger than you are right now.
I know, but you've noticed it, haven't you? I have. Well, if that's what you've decided, then we'll need to prepare ourselves before the operation begins. Naruto could only agree with Kurama. Breakfast came to an end. When it did, Naruto suggested to Issei they find a place away from the vampire's village to do some group sparring. No one disagreed with his suggestion, and so both the Grimoire and Valley groups left the mansion, traveled away from the village, and found a nice field where they could spar without having to worry about any prying eyes.
I don't think we should use any magic or powerful attacks right now, Ravel said. We want to be rested, so let's just do some light sparring. We can work in groups and practice our teamwork. I believe that will be important in the coming battle.
You're right, Naruto agreed. Okay, let's do some teamwork drills then. Teamwork drills were basic exercises in which their group formed 2 teams and sparred against each other using tactics. It wasn't just sparring, however. There was a goal in mind for these exercises, and each exercise was almost like a game. The current game was Capture the Flag. Naruto's team consisted of Kaneko, Ravel, Roswise, Irina, Lefei, Kuroka, and Fenrir. Issei's side had Akano, Asia, Baiko, Gasper, Rainier, Zenobia, and Valley. With the goal of capture the flag being to take the other team's flag before your own was taken, Ravel had decided that their best option was to use Naruto and Kaneko to guard their flag.
Since a lot of limits had been imposed on this game, Naruto's own abilities were likewise limited, which meant guarding the flag on his own would be impossible. That was why Kaneko had joined him. Ravel had figured they would send either Issei or Valley and 2 others to capture their flag, while everyone else would defend the flag. Heads up. We've got bogeys incoming, Kaneko suddenly said, turning her head to look in one direction.
Naruto looked up and saw what she was talking about. Valley was walking out from behind the line of trees. He seemed to be alone. Can you sense anyone else around? Asked Naruto. Kaneko one-eyed her head to the side as if listening for something, then shook her head. Even if you can't sense someone, keep your eyes open. I'm sure Valley wouldn't come alone.
Don't worry. I'll make sure no one touches the flag, Kaneko said. With Kaneko's assurance backing him, Naruto strode forward to confront Valley, who was grinning from ear to ear. You don't know how long I've wanted to fight you, Valley said. Ever since we first met, I've wanted to have a bout with you. I know. Though you do realize we can't go all out, right? Of course. That's fine by me. I just want to feel the thrill of a good battle.
Naruto nodded in acceptance. Valley was a battle maniac through and through. He craved combat, enjoyed pushing his limits, and fighting against strong opponents. Naruto was the same. While he didn't much care for war and death, he would not lie and say the idea of fighting against strong people didn't interest him.
On an unspoken signal, Naruto and Valley pushed against the ground and sped toward each other, their fists clashing between them as they threw a punch at the same time. Even though no powers had been used, the air was still kicked up between them. It was like an airburst.
Naruto was the first to react. He twisted his wrist, diverted Valley's first with an open palm, and stepped forward. He tried to strike Valley while the other man was off balance. It didn't work. Of course Valley would not let himself be hit that easily. He swayed to the side and twisted his body, allowing Naruto's fist to soar past him. Then he grabbed Naruto's extended wrist, spun around, and tried to flip him through the air. Naruto replaced himself with a log. A moment after Naruto disappeared, the log exploded and dozens of ninja wire burst from the splinters, wrapped around Valley, and pulled his arms tight against him. Valley broke the ninja wire easily enough. However, Naruto had used that time to appear behind him. The hit Naruto sent to Valley's back was strong enough to knock the white dragon forward, but Valley used his momentum to move into a series of front and back handsprings. He landed on the ground several meters from Naruto, who now stood where Valley had been. Your sense of tactics is impressive, Valley complimented. And your instincts are sharp, Naruto said. HMPH. Don't act like you don't have killer instincts too. I can see it in your eyes. You know war perhaps better than anyone else I know save Azazel. Well, I was in a war back in my old home, so, Naruto shrugged. Anyway, you ready to continue?
Of course. With those words, Naruto and Valley once more clashed in the open field. Devil Ninja, Sona arrived late in the afternoon alongside her peerage. Naruto greeted her with Azazel and Elmenhilda, who was now acting as their host, a job that had been given to her by Queen Carmilla. It was interesting to see how humble she was acting now. She'd been so arrogant before that the change was a little shocking.
Greetings, Sona Citri. Elmenhild curtsied like a proper European noblewoman. It is a pleasure to see you again, though I do wish it was under better circumstances.
Good afternoon, Elmenhilda, Sona greeted the vampire with a similar courtesy. I understand how you feel. I was briefed on the situation before coming here. It does not sound good.
Sona was not alone. Ophis was with her. The dragon god walked up to Naruto and tugged on his sleeve. She didn't say anything, but that was because she didn't need to. Her eyes said everything.
Naruto began petting her head. Thank you for doing this, Ophis. I really do appreciate it.
Ophis smiled as she closed her eyes and leaned into his hand. She reminded him of a cat seeking affection from its owner. You are welcome. I like Rias too. It wasn't many words, but Naruto understood what she meant just fine. Ophis was close to Rias. Out of all the women in his harem, he believed Ophis was probably closest to the redhead. He thought it was because of the way Rias treated her. Out of all the people in their group, Rias was the one who treated her almost as affectionately as Naruto did. Well, it was his theory at least. Please let me show you to the rooms you will be staying at during your time here. I can. Gay. Elmenhild stopped mid-sentence when her eyes landed on Lugaro. Werewolf. You have a werewolf in your peerage. Yes. Sona pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose. Is that a problem? No, Elmenhild said, though it was clear she was not being honest. Please follow me. Elmenhild turned around and walked into the mansion, Naruto, Ophis, and Sona's peerage following behind her. They swept past the entrance hall and into a large hallway on the second floor. The sound of their footsteps echoed around them.
Well, that was odd, Naruto murmured. Hey. I guess it's true what they say about vampires not liking werewolves, Saji said with a smirk. Oh. Naruto looked over at Saji, interested in what the boy was saying. He still didn't know much about the various species around the world. And while he had studied vampires for a bit, this was not something he remembered reading about. Nor was it something Rias had informed him of when she told him about vampires. He guessed this information hadn't been important at the time since he was studying their culture and not their enemies.
Werewolves and vampires are natural enemies that have hated each other since time immemorial, Sona explained as they turned a corner.
Neither side remembers where this hatred comes from. It could be a simple matter of pride. Vampires and werewolves are both incredibly powerful supernatural entities with a great deal of pride. Both races believe they are superior to the other. This sense of superiority could have manifested into a form of hatred after thousands upon thousands of years of competing with each other. But who knows for sure if that's true? That was an interesting theory. Naruto did know about how prideful vampires were from dealing with Elmenhilda when she first arrived. If she was an excellent example of her entire race, then the superiority complex of her race would make all too much sense. He could definitely see them thinking they were better than werewolves. Of course, Naruto knew squat about werewolves, so he couldn't say whether or not they were the same as vampires.
He glanced at Lu Garo, who had not spoken up since they arrived. The man was so quiet. Naruto had learned during the mission to defeat the stray magicians that Lu Garo was enrolled in Kuo Academy's college department. Sadly, that was about all he knew. The werewolf was so quiet that Naruto hadn't been able to talk to him at all. It didn't help that they were in different peerages. The rooms Elmenhild showed them to were across the hall from the ones the Grimoire group was using. Naruto didn't go inside. Once Elmenhild showed them their rooms, she turned on her heel and left. Naruto decided to follow her. Office, of course, followed Naruto, both her arms wrapped around his left arm. Is it true what Sona said? He asked. That vampires and werewolves don't get along because you both believe you are the superior species. Elmenhild glanced at him, shrugged, and looked away. Who knows? Our two races have hated each other for so long that I doubt anyone remembers the real reason for it.
And do you hate werewolves? Would it matter if I did?
I guess not. Silence stretched out between them as they walked. Elmenhild kept glancing at him and Office. She looked like she wanted to say something, but she held herself back.
Naruto, the one who spoke was not Elmenhilda, it was Office. Yeah, I want to have sex now. You promised we could do it when I came back.
I did, didn't I? You did. I want to have sex. Now.
Can you two not talk about having sex in my presence? Elmenhild's ears and cheeks turned bright red as she shouted at them. Devil Ninja. The evening drew closer and Arthur had not returned. Naruto was worried he had gotten caught up in something dangerous. Maybe he'd arrived in heaven to find them being besieged by the Titans. While Valley had assured him something like that wouldn't happen because Arthur could just open a portal and leave, that did not stop him from worrying and wondering.
It looks like help isn't coming from heaven. That means we will have to make do with the forces we have, Azazel said. They were all in the entrance hall, the place where Queen Carmilla received people who sought to speak with her. The ceiling had been repaired by Azazel. While Queen Carmilla sat on her throne and Elmenhild stood by her side, Azazel, the Grimoire peerage, Sona's peerage, and Team Valley stood before the throne. Are you sure we can succeed with so few numbers? Asked Sona. I do not mean to be so pessimistic, but Office did tell me about the kind of forces we are facing. An army of modified dragons that have been enhanced by the Holy Grail's power is not something so few people can deal with.
You are right, of course. Azazel nodded in agreement. However, you're thinking in terms of a confrontation. We're not planning to fight them head-on. Our goal right now is to rescue Rias Gremory and Kiba Yuto, not defeat an army with an unknown number of modified dragons. That said, we will need to break through their defenses if we want to reach Tep's castle. Valley? Valley stepped forward, hands in his pocket and a cool look on his face. He seemed completely at ease under the looks people were giving him.
We've done some reconnaissance of the area surrounding Tep's castle. Just like we suspected, all the vampires there have been transformed into dragons. We could not get an accurate estimation of their numbers. I'd say there were maybe 10,000 of them, but there could be more. In either event, they have arranged themselves to form a defensive perimeter around the castle and surrounding town. No matter which direction we attack from, they can send reinforcements to enforce that area. Breaking through won't be easy.
No, Revel said after Valley finished speaking. I believe it will be easier than you think.
How so? Asked Valley. Revel coughed into her hand. Our goal in all this is not to defeat this army but to infiltrate the castle. If we send a force against the modified dragons, then have them retreat and get the army to chase after them, we can create a gap in their defenses that a small task force can slip through. I was thinking we could have Azazel lead an army of vampires against the Tep's faction as a distraction. As expected of Revel, her plan was quite sound. However, there was someone among them who had an objection. While your plan would certainly help accomplish your goal, it would also put my people in danger, Queen Carmilla said. Not only are my own forces not as comparable to the Tep's faction in terms of numbers, but now that the Tep's faction vampires have been transformed with the Holy Grail's power, they far outstrip us in terms of firepower too. I fear our forces would be overwhelmed.
Naruto would have furrowed his brow at the woman. But he understood that she needed to think of her people first and foremost. It was what all leaders did. If they could not put their people ahead of everyone else, they would not make good leaders. It still rankled on his nerves though.
Not true, Revel objected. The modified dragons might be more powerful than a normal vampire, but I took the opportunity to study how the modified dragons fight when we were helping you fend off the assault. I have a plan that will keep your casualties to an absolute minimum. While Queen Carmilla looked cynical, Naruto could not keep the smile off his face. Revel was definitely the greatest strategist among them. The way she came up with plans so quickly and decisively carried them out always impressed him. He also liked her managerial skills. It was only thanks to Revel's management that Naruto could get his work done in a timely manner.
And what is your plan? Asked Queen Carmilla. If I deem it a good plan, I may agree to lend my aid, but be warned, I will not help with this if it sounds like my people are going to be used as sacrificial pawns. It does not matter if we join the three factions alliance if my people suffer. Revel nodded. You do not need to worry, I am sure you will approve of my plan.
She took a deep breath as though psyching herself up.
The plan calls for the Carmilla faction vampires drawing the attention of the modified dragons to create a gap in their defenses that a small team of elite forces can slip through.
Of course, this is a dangerous task, and I won't deny that. First, I plan on having Team Valley work with the vampires to help mitigate the pressure you will face. This includes Naruto's personal magician, Lefay Pendragon. Every member of Team Valley has the strength of a high-class devil. The modified dragons only have the strength of mid-class devils, so they should have no trouble killing a lot of them.
Hold on. Valley raised a hand. What is it? Asked Revel. I don't mind if everyone else fights against the modified dragons with the vampires, but I am going to be on the infiltration team. I refuse to let anyone else fight Rizavim. He is mine.
Valley was Rizavim's grandson. While Naruto didn't know exactly what went down between them, he knew that Valley hated his grandfather as much as he hated his own father. Naruto's understanding was that Valley had been abused and mistreated by his entire family. Perhaps this was a familial grudge that could only be solved with violence. All right, Revel said at last. In that case, Valley will go with the infiltration group. We'll have Sona's peerage move from being part of the infiltration group to working with Team Valley. She turned to Sona. Is that okay with you?
I am fine with whatever you decide, Sona said. Okay then.
Valley will join the infiltration group, which will be spearheaded by Naruto. Your goal is to enter Tep's castle, confront Rizavim and Yami, and rescue Ria-sama and Kiba-san. Your group will consist of Akeno, Asia, Kaneko, Aiz, Irina, Naruto, Rainier, Rosweiss, and Valley. Everyone else will join the vampires. Once the vampires have grabbed the modified dragon's attention, we will retreat to a more defensible location, where Azazel will prepare a barrier for us. While some people felt the infiltration team needed more people, Naruto understood that any more than what they already had would be too much. Too many people would just get in the way. It also wouldn't help against people like Rizavim and Yami. Rather than fighting them with a lot of people, it was better to face them with a small group of powerful individuals.
The plans to attack Tep's castle continued into the evening. The operation would begin at midnight. Devil Ninja, midnight. A time when the people of this world believed all ninja operated. Naruto would have laughed at most people, but since he was a ninja in the middle of a midnight operation, he could only laugh at himself. The cold night air was not enough to even mildly faze him as he stood several dozen meters from the first perimeter of the Tep's faction's village, their base of operations. With him were Issei, Valley, Akeno, Asia, Kaneko, Irina, Rainier, and Rosweiss. They were part of his team for this operation, which would begin once the other group lured the majority of modified dragons to them. Naruto's breathing was steady as he observed the army before them. They were the modified dragons enhanced by the Holy Grail. There must have been thousands of them, in the sky, on the ground. Not all of them looked the same either. One of them might have blue scales, while another might have red or green scales. The length of their wings also varied from dragon to dragon, as did other facets about them like their muzzles, teeth, size, and shape. It wasn't something he noticed when killing them. He'd only spotted the differences now. Some ninja you are. Knit, furball. That is a lot of dragons, Issei mumbled. I thought the army we fought against before was big, Irina muttered in a bitter voice, but this is ridiculous. I said there were a lot, Valley shrugged. It's one thing to hear about it, It's another thing entirely to fucking see it, Rainier said. Holy fucking shit. This is insane. There's no way we have enough forces to deal with this fuckfest.
Fortunately, dealing with these dragons isn't our job, Naruto said. Word, Kaneko agreed. Naruto pressed a hand to his left ear, activating the communication device inside. Revel, we're in position. How are things on your end? Devil Ninja. Revel, we're in position. How are things on your end? The moment Revel heard the words spoken into her ear, she reached up to activate the communicator and spoke into it.
We're all ready to begin. Then begin the operation now. I'll see you when this is all over. Yeah, see you. Revel lowered her hand, took a deep breath, and psyched herself up. This was it. She turned to Queen Carmilla, who had joined her and Azazel on the battlefield. The queen was dressed in armor fit for a warrior princess. The steel corset wrapped around her body, flared out at the hips into a pleated skirt made of leaf-shaped segments, and her feet and hands were adorned with greaves and gauntlets. Revel wondered if this woman really needed such adornments, but she didn't question her. We're ready. Let's begin the operation. Very well. Queen Carmilla nodded and turned to look at her forces, the several thousand-strong army of vampires standing just behind them. My people, the Teps faction has betrayed us and themselves. They have allowed an evil man like Rizavam into their homes, and look at what it got them. They were turned into abominations. But we are magnanimous. Let us, their former brethren, put them out of their misery. To battle. A great cheer went up, thousands of voices raising their battle cries as they surged forward. Some became bats and flew through the air, others turned into mist, and a few simply raced across the plain. Revel was at the head of this procession. She flew alongside Azazel, Queen Carmilla, Elmenhilda, Ophis, and the other members of the Gremory peerage. Sona and her peerage were hanging back for now. They were with Team Valley. Their job was to wait until the vampires had engaged the enemy, and then strike them from behind after the army led them to the location they had chosen to defend. They were to be the hammer that smacked the modified dragon forces against the anvil that was the Carmilla faction. First contact with the enemy was made by those of them at the front. Revel's demonic power flared, her wings grew brighter, and a pair of fireballs appeared within her hands. She combined them together, forming a swirling ball of incandescence that exploded into a brilliant orange beam. The fire attack engulfed a dragon and burned it into cinders. It continued on, killing several more before exploding in a fierce gale of burning hot wind. As if in response to the sudden attacks from her forces, the modified dragons howled and attacked in turn. Dragon fire spewed from their mouths. The incredible flames swept over several vampires, charring them. Their smoking corpses tumbled to the ground. In the skies above, a number of the vampires that had turned bats were charred. They plummeted to the ground below. Revel was no longer able to focus on the flow of battle. Much as she wished she could remain back, observe the situation, and direct their forces, a battle like this was too chaotic, too messy for that. Hanging back would be useless. And so she fought. A pair of brilliant flames coalesced into her hands, and she transformed them into short swords. As a bishop, Revel specialized in magical attacks, and indeed, her magic power was quite impressive even for a high-class devil. However, her melee skills were lacking. Like her brother Riser, she had never been one for close combat. That had changed recently. Revel knew she couldn't afford to remain behind all the time, thus she sought to improve her combat abilities by sparring daily with Irina and Zenobia. Naruto probably knew about what she was doing. He never said anything, however. He didn't have to. There was a tacit understanding and trust between them, formed from their relationship. That was something Revel cherished. Revel did not release any battle cries. She did not shout. With a fierce look on her face, she waded into the enemy forces and attacked. Her blade made quick work of an eye as she thrust it forward. The dragon roared and tried to claw at her, but Revel created a shield of fire between her and the claw. Flare bursts exploded before her eyes as she spun around behind the creature, leapt upon its shoulders, and stabbed her fire swords through the back of its neck. The creature groaned, tottered forward, and died. Revel jumped off its back and sought out her next opponent. Chaos reigned all around her. The cloying scent of blood filled her nose and the anguished screams of the dying mixed with the draconic roars of the enraged dragons as they also found themselves in death's embrace. Revel felt sick to her stomach as a vampire on her left charged at a dragon and was impaled through the stomach.
The claws sprouted from his back, blood running down them as the dragon lifted the vampire up and tossed him aside. As it roared as though demanding another challenger, Rebel swallowed the bile surging up in her throat.
And then she removed its head with a crescent-shaped fireblade. It was only at this moment that Rebel realized she was all alone in this sea of combat. None of her companions were near her. At that moment, a terrifying roar went up. Rebel snapped her head in that direction and found Gasper, transformed into a massive 5-meter monster and attacking the enemy-modified dragons. He looked different than his normal form. Gasper's normal balance breaker, Balor the Beast, transformed him into a creature with a dragon's head, arms with claws, and massive wings. His transformation this time resembled a fox with 9 tails. Bloody irises surrounded by darkness stared at the world with savage eagerness, or so it seemed to Rebel, and his torso was shaped more like a human's than a fox's. He even had opposable thumbs. The massive 9-tailed fox lashed out with its tails. Everything around it was destroyed. The ground, the modified dragons, everything. It was a good thing there were no members of their own forces near it, or they would have been killed too. Seeing this terrifying creature sent a chill up Rebel's spine. Like most vampires, Gasper had the ability to gain power from drinking people's blood. His dragon form when he activates his balance breaker was the result of drinking Issei's blood. In that case, this new form he used very likely came from drinking Naruto's blood. Naruto must have given it to him before the mission began. At that moment, Rebel's attention was forced away from Gasper as a powerful energy descended upon the battlefield. Several black beams of energy lanced down from above. They curved around the vampires and struck the modified dragons, blowing holes clean through their bodies. The wounds looked like black holes that ran through them. Each attack was a killing blow, striking either the heart or the head. Nearly 20 modified dragons dropped dead in less than a single second.
The one who had unleashed that astonishing attack was Ophis,
the infinite dragon god. The Ouroboros dragon. Rebel sometimes forgot about how powerful Ophis was, forgot that this seemingly petite woman was actually a creature who had lived since the beginning of time and held unimaginable power. Even after most of her power had been stolen by Rizavum. The Ophis that Rebel knew was constantly seeking affection from Naruto. She was like a cat who wanted to be pampered. She was also one of Naruto's hornier women, but Rebel tried not to think about that. Ophis hovered in the skies above their group, her eyes staring at the forces arrayed against them, bored and unfeeling. Several dragons swooped over to attack her. They were surrounded her on all sides, what must have been several dozen of them. She annihilated them in an instant. Destructive energy swept out of her body and engulfed the enemies surrounding her, completely erasing them from the face of the world. Several dragons that had been charging toward her suddenly turned tail and attacked someone else. Rebel gulped. Then she focused on the task at hand. Queen Carmilla. Signal the retreat. Rebel said into her communicator.
All forces, withdraw to the defense point. Queen Carmilla's command was somehow heard over the din of battle. Their group quickly withdrew, with Gasper and the other members of Rias Peerage providing cover for the vampires. A few died, but it was only a few. They were soon retreating through the woods.
The modified dragons followed them. This was all according to plan.
Rebel grimaced as dragon fire burst all around her, but she fought back by launching fire blades at the nearest modified dragons. Her attacks missed. However, they did an admirable job of forcing her enemies to dodge. They soon burst from the woods and found themselves standing between a pair of mountains. This was where they would make their stand. Looks like I'm up, Azazel said as he stepped forward. He raised his hands and held up a device that Rebel had never seen before. The device glowed with a bright luminescence before several hundred magic circles appeared on the ground, then transformed into a translucent barrier.
Get the injured in the barrier. Rebel ordered. Healers. Do your best to heal the wounded. When your wounds have been healed, come back out of the barrier and ward off the dragons.
This was Rebel's plan. Their forces would defend this location. When someone was injured, they would head inside of the barrier, where first aid would be administered, and then come back out to continue fighting. Like this, even if they did not have the same numbers as their foes, they could fight longer and harder. A roar echoed across the area as the modified dragons surged in. The battle continued. Rebel did not know for how long, but Sona's Peerage and Team Valley soon entered the fray, attacking from behind and destroying a large chunk of the modified dragon forces.
This took some of the pressure off Queen Carmilla's forces and gave them a chance to breathe. A number of vampires retreated into the barrier with severe injuries. Oddly enough, or perhaps not, Queen Carmilla remained at the front as she fought side by side with Azazel. "It looks like the battle has turned in our favor," Ophis said as she floated down to stand beside Revel.
"It seems that way," Revel agreed. Ophis tilted her head, which caused Revel to furrow her brow. "Is something wrong?"
"I am not sure. Perhaps I am mistaken, but I feel like the forces we are fighting are too few in number," Ophis said, her voice a murmur. Too few. Revel wanted to laugh and say it was just because Ophis was too powerful, but she couldn't. "Now that you mention it, Valley did tell us they had around 10,000 modified dragons, but I feel like there were only a third of that."
"Yes, there were only about 4,000, Ophis agreed.
Revel felt something niggling in the back of her mind, but she couldn't figure out what, like an itch that couldn't be scratched. A little ways off, Biku and Kuroka were fighting against several dragons. Kuroka was using her senjutsu to poison them. A thick purple fog spilled from her body and surrounded an entire battalion. And then Biku threw himself at the dragons once they were weakened and took them down with precise strikes of his staff. His attacks were powerful enough to leave craters in the skulls of his enemies. He must have been using Tuki. As she watched the battle, Revel had the sense that she was missing something, but she understood there was nothing she could do now. The dice had already been cast. There was only one thing she could do in a situation like this. Revel looked at Ophis. "Could you go and find Naruto? I suspect he might be in danger." "Yes, I will help Naruto." Ophis floated into the air, paused, and then looked at Revel. "Be careful." With those parting words, Ophis disappeared. Revel stared at where she had been, sighed, and then flew off to rejoin her companions. Devil Ninja. Naruto and his group were moving the moment the fireworks started. They had already infiltrated Tep's castle, which was an intimidating and ominous thing made of towering spires, flying buttresses, and evil-looking stone golems sitting on the roof. Naruto had not been aware that standard vampire castles did indeed exist outside of fiction. The Carmilla faction's castle was actually pleasant if gaudy. This was like someone had taken every Dracula set from every Dracula movie and combined them to create the most grotesque building ever conceived. It was that horrifying. Okay, maybe not that horrifying, but it was very ugly. The inside wasn't much better than the outside. After killing their way through several modified dragons that had remained behind as guards, they entered a side door that led into a kitchen. The kitchen was gloomy. That was the only word Naruto could use to describe it. With not a soul in sight and numerous knives and other implements lying around, the entire place just seemed dead. It also set off warning bells in Naruto's head. "Where is everyone?" asked Issei as they crept along a creepy-ass hallway. Naruto wondered if his perception was merely shifting, telling him this hall was like something out of Resident Evil, but even if it was, he would have stuck by his beliefs. He was stubborn like that. "They've probably all been turned into modified dragons," Valley said. "I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't a single vampire left among the Tep's faction." "That makes a horrifying amount of sense," Irina muttered, face pale. Fuck, Kaneko was a lot more succinct. They continued running, passing through hallways, entering rooms, and searching for any sign of life. There was nothing. This place was emptier than a grave because at least a grave had tombstones. While this place did have some extremely fancy decorations, like the lounge that reminded Naruto of the suites he'd slept in at various Gremory-owned hotels, it really seemed as if there was nothing here. Naruto called for them to stop. They weren't getting anywhere by running around like headless chickens. "Do you sense anyone?" Naruto asked Kaneko. Kaneko one-eyed her head to the side as her cat-like pupils became even more slitted. Her split tail waved behind her back like it had a mind of its own. Her cat ears twitched several times as if a burst of cold air had hit them. "I can," she said at last. "Where are they?" asked Valley. Kaneko pointed down. "Beneath us. It sounds like there is a basement," Rosswise said as she looked down with narrowed eyes. "I am not surprised. Castles like this will always have a dungeon located underground. We will likely find Rias Gremory, Kiba Yuto, and their captors down there. In other words, we should be looking for a hidden passage," Naruto said. "This is fucking great," Rainier growled. "Can this get any more complicated? If you don't like our situation, you can always leave," Akino said with a pleasant smile. Of course, it only appeared pleasant.
Naruto could practically sense the snidiness rolling off the woman in waves. Fuck that, Rainier spat. Get bent, bitch. You foo. Only if you do first.
If you two are going to argue, I am going to leave you here, Naruto said, which shut the both of them up quick.
Since their destination was below them, Naruto and the others began searching for a stairway or secret passage that led into the basement. There was one staircase that led down. However, they soon realized it only led to a normal basement and not a dungeon. They also couldn't find a secret passage in this basement that led further down, which, according to Kaneko, was where all of those people were located. Naruto was just about to consider blowing a hole through the floor when Kaneko discovered a secret entrance in one of the lounge rooms. There was a secret staircase underneath one of the couches. Just how Kaneko uncovered such an entrance, he didn't know, but they all traveled down into the depths of the dark passage, scarcely lit by several candles affixed to candelabras.
Finally, they emerged into another room. This other room was a long hallway with several jail cells located inside of it. Naruto began walking down each cell, searching them for signs of Rias and Kiba. He didn't find them. Where are they? Asked Naruto, finally losing his patience. He'd been keeping his impatience contained through sheer force of will, but it was impossible to remain calm when he still couldn't find the people he was looking for.
I believe there is one more floor below us, Kaneko said. That's where I sense people. I wonder how many floors this basement has, Issei mused.
Who the fuck cares? Asked Rainier. I just want to get this fucking over with. Naruto, we should probably proceed with caution. I've been getting a bad feeling ever since we entered this castle, Roswise said.
Naruto closed his eyes. He didn't want to be cautious, but he felt the same way Roswise did. The hairs on the back of his neck were prickling. As someone who relied purely on intuition and feeling, he knew when to be reckless and when to use caution.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move out, but cautiously, Naruto said.
There was a door at the end of this hall, which led down to the next level. They traveled down a spiral staircase. A door sat at the bottom, and through the door was a large room with almost nothing in it, nothing except the throne at the end and the people standing there.
Perhaps it was natural for him, but the first person Naruto noticed was Rias Gremory, standing there in a dress. It didn't look like she had been harmed. Kiba was next to her. Unlike Rias, he was actually injured. His left arm hung limp like every bone inside it had been shattered and his face was covered in contusions. Naruto could only imagine what he had been put through. Beside them were three people. Yami, Rizavam, Lilith. While Lilith didn't wear an expression one way or the other, Rizavam and Yami had donned cold smiles, the kind that spoke of incredible cruelty. They looked like a pair of 2-bit villains.
Naruto, Rias whispered with a sad murmur. Naruto took a deep breath in a vain attempt at keeping calm, but anyone who knew him would know how much he valued the people he loved. The people who were precious to him. While it didn't look like Rias had been harmed, she had clearly still suffered greatly. He guessed she'd been forced to watch as Kiba was tortured. That would have been far harder on someone like Rias, someone who valued her servants above even her own life. Yami, I am going to kill you, Naruto declared. There was no joking in his voice.
We don't see each other in so long, and that's the first thing you say to me? Yami asked with a chuckle. I'm disappointed, Naruto.
Like I care, Naruto grunted. You've gone too far this time. So you say, but I personally do not believe I have gone far enough. In fact, now that you are here, we can start the main event.
What does he mean by the main event? Asked Issei.
Naruto would have liked to know that too, but then he realized what this main event was when Yami nodded at Lilith, who suddenly appeared behind Rias. He couldn't see Lilith anymore. Her body was so small that Rias blocked it. He didn't need to, however. Perhaps it was his sharp intuition, but he understood what Lilith was about to do, and he acted before she could complete her plan. There were a lot of debates about the Kawarimi no Jutsu. Some people had theorized that it was a low-level space-time technique, while others hypothesized that it couldn't be because time-space techniques are too advanced for the average shinobi to wield. Naruto didn't know whether he believed the Kawarimi no Jutsu manipulated time and space or not, but it was one of the few jutsu he had completely mastered to the point where he didn't need hand seals. That was why he could replace himself with Rias. It happened in an instant. There was a slight puff of smoke as Rias suddenly found herself standing in Naruto's place and Naruto stood where she had been. Lilith continued her attack, plunging her hand into Naruto's chest. The pain from being impaled caused his vision to white out as he grunted. He could feel the tiny hand slide between his ribcage and attempt to grab his heart, but he latched onto Lilith's hand and stopped her.
Naruto! Rias screamed when she suddenly realized what had happened. Kiba, now right next to Naruto, stared in wide-eyed horror as he saw what happened.
TCH. Yami clicked his tongue. It's such a simple jutsu, I completely forgot you were an expert on it.
I'm surprised. Naruto grimaced as blood down his mouth and Lilith's arm. You of all people should know how good I am at this jutsu.
Yami scowled. You have not used that jutsu since gaining Kurama's power. There's no way I would remember how skilled you are. Naruto thought he detected a lie in Yami's words, but he was far too busy trying to keep Lilith's hand from grabbing his heart. He could feel her pushing her arm forward. This girl was a lot stronger than she looked. How could someone with such skinny arms be this strong? Was it because she had been created to contain the powers of the infinite dragon god?
While Naruto was trying to figure out what he should do in this situation, Rizavum appeared behind him, hand poised to pierce his back.
Since it seems Lilith has failed in her task, I will help her complete what she started, Rizavum said. Like I'd let you do that, another voice said. The voice belonged to Valley, already dressed in the white scale mail armor of his balance breaker. He had burst forward the moment Rizavum made his move and slammed into the older devil. There was nothing graceful about this attack. It was like a headbutt. Valley crashed headfirst into the man, sending them both backward. At the same time, a magic circle appeared between Lilith and Naruto, and a tiny figure emerged from within the magic circle. Kaneko. The tiny Nekosho was crouched low, legs spread into a horse stance. She didn't hesitate to launch her own attack. The two fists she threw forward slammed into Lilith with enough force that the girl went flying back. Naruto grunted as blood spurted from the wound in his chest, but his intense regeneration kicked in and healed the injury up near instantly. He patted his chest as Kaneko glared at Lilith. She took several steps back to stand beside him. Meanwhile, Lilith looked at Naruto for several seconds before glancing at Yami.
It's fine. I figured this would happen. Naruto wouldn't be much of an opponent if he was that easy to kill, Yami said.
The other members of Naruto's group quickly ran over to him. It looked like they were trying to protect him, which Naruto appreciated, but he knew now wasn't the time for sentimentality. I want you to help Valley, Naruto said. Asia, heal Kiba and Rias. The rest of you are going to help me. I don't like leaving you hanging like this, but I know better than to argue. Kick his ass, you blonde bastard, Issei said. Issei didn't need any more incentive than that as he headed over to where Valley was squaring off against his own grandfather. The sound of explosions was already echoing from over there. Naruto didn't need to look to know how intense the battle between them had become. Why are you doing this, Yami? What are you hoping to accomplish? Asked Naruto.
I believe I told you. I am going to become so strong that I can consume your existence, and then I will become the real Naruto. Of course, to do that, I need a lot more strength than I have now. After all, even if I am stronger than you right now, you've got a helper inside of you. My plan is quite simple. I am going to gather power, throw the world into chaos, and then undo the seal holding a great evil that was imprisoned long ago, Yami said. A great evil? What are you talking about? Asked Naruto.
Rosweiss lifted a hand to her mouth. You don't mean.
I do. Yami's grin widened. I plan on releasing Trihexa from its prison, and then I will seal Trihexa into myself. I will become Trihexa's Jinchuriki, and together, we will destroy this rotten world. Devil Ninja. What's the matter, Valley? Having trouble hitting me? Perhaps you are feeling sentimental and can't hit your dear grandfather? Shut up. Divide. 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 Valley already knew what would happen the moment he tried to divide Rizavum's power, but he went ahead and made the attempt anyway.
Rizavum laughed as he leapt forward far faster than Valley could comprehend. A fist slammed into his chest, and just like that, the power Valley was using was completely cancelled.
At the same time, Rizavum stepped forward and slammed his elbow into Valley's chin. Valley, unable to stop his forward momentum, practically walked into the attack. Stars exploded in the young man's vision as he stumbled back.
Rizavum did not let up. Valley soon found himself on the defensive, taking hits that caused his vision to go white. A smack to the skull rattled his brain. Something hard slammed into his knee, nearly causing it to bend the other way. Just as he was teetering, Rizvam launched a powerful double punch. While Valley got his arms up in time to block, the attack produced a shockwave as he was lifted off his feet, slammed into the ground, and rolled across the floor. You don't really think you can beat your dear old grandfather with such paltry skills, do you? Asked Rizvam as Valley climbed to his feet. He spread his arms wide as Valley wiped the blood dripping down his mouth. Come now, Valley. I know you aren't weak. At least try to give me a better fight than this, you fucking pathetic loser. Valley scowled. He wanted to scream at this man that the only reason he was able to take him on was due to the sacred gear canceller. That unique ability of his could cancel out the power of a sacred gear. Of course, this included Valley's balance breaker. Dragon shot. A powerful beam of bright red energy tore through the underground chamber, burning away ozone and the floor as it traveled straight for Rizvam. The attack was so powerful even Valley felt a thrill run down his spine. Rizvam's eyes went wide as he flapped his wings to move back quickly, letting the attack tear through the space he had been standing. The beam continued on, exploded against the wall, and caused the entire building to shake. Valley had to close his eyes as he was hit by bright light and force winds. He would have been blown clean off his feet if he hadn't hunkered down. Even though he wasn't sent flying, he still slid across the ground despite using his scale mail's clawed feet to dig his heels into the floor.
When his vision returned, Valley opened his eyes to find the entire wall and ground gone. Part of the ceiling was also gone, revealing a good chunk of the floor above.
Valley, you okay? Asked Issei as he landed next to him.
Like Valley, Issei had entered his balance breaker. Red scale mail covered his body from head to toe. Green gems glowed from his chest, knees, and elbows. The wings on his back looked like those of a true dragon. Meanwhile, a tail with a sharp point curled behind him.
Yeah, I'm fine, Valley muttered with furrowed brows. You've gotten a lot stronger. Of course I have. Don't you know how hard I've been training? Issei looked pretty pleased with himself.
The one among them who did not seem pleased was Rizvam. He scowled at Issei, but then his expression shifted back into a smile as he walked forward with a swagger in his step.
I must admit, I'm surprised you've got so much power. However, at the end of the day, you still don't have what it takes to beat me.
We'll see about that. Fucker. Issei raised his finger and flipped off Rizvam, then turned to Valley. Come on, Valley. Let's turn this douche nozzle of a grandfather of yours into mincemeat.
Valley didn't say anything for a moment as he stared in surprise at Issei. He wouldn't say he was happy with the idea of teaming up against his grandfather, because he wanted to beat this man himself, but the idea of fighting beside Issei had a certain appeal. Two rivals standing side by side to defeat a powerful threat. Yes, it was something he could get behind, and he knew right now this might be the only way he could fight this man on even grounds. Alright then, let's do this, Issei Hyodo. Hell yeah, let's kick his ass. Boost, 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 boost.
Issei boosted himself without limit, his power skyrocketing to the point where it matched Valley's. The two of them turned to face Rizvam. Their enemy now wore a scowl. With their faces covered in a helmet that hid their expressions, the pair launched themselves at Rizvam.
Devil Ninja. Lilith tried to make her way over to Rizvam. You girls need to stop her. Naruto shouted at Akino, Kaneko, Irina, Rainier, and Rosweiss.
Don't fucking tell me what to do. Rainier snarled. Despite this, she created a spear of light and hurled it at Lilith, who didn't even look her way as she smacked the weapon away like it was nothing. Fuck. Let's try this, Akino said as she created holy lightning and sent a powerful burst at Lilith. Just like what happened with Rainier's spear of light, Akino's holy lightning was smacked away like it was nothing. Well, this isn't good.
Lilith was simply too powerful for their magic to harm her. It made sense. Lilith now contained the vast majority of Ophi's power, which meant she was a creature so far above them she was like a giant and they were ants. Despite this, no one gave up. Rosweiss held out her hand and created several complex magic circles with the House of Grimoire crest in the center. There were a myriad of different colors. He thought he recognized the different kinds of magic being used, but then something shocking happened. The circles combined, forming a single, large magic circle that was far above anything he'd ever seen. Rosweiss gritted her teeth and released a snarl as she unleashed the magic.
Lilith stopped moving. She turned toward the magic and raised her hands. A nearly transparent bubble seemed to form over her body. The magical attack, which looked like 1,000 glowing missiles of magical energy, slammed into the barrier and detonated. Even Naruto winced at the force of the detonation. A dense blast of hot air slammed into him and Yami. Blinding light blocked out Naruto's vision as a loud rumbling caused his ears so much pain it felt like his eardrums might collapse. When everything cleared up, Naruto opened his eyes and looked again, but this time he was staring at a massive crater on the floor. He didn't know how big it was, but it took up nearly a fourth of the gigantic room. The edges of the stone had melted into slag and were still glowing a molten orange. Lilith was unharmed. She stood in the center, transparent bubble still surrounding her. It flickered once before disappearing.
What the hell? Are you telling me that attack did nothing? Rosweiss squawked. Just what kind of monster is she? Asked Rainier in a frightened whisper. Shit, I shouldn't have come here. Giving up? Asked Kaneko, now in her Sharon mode. Her massive breasts were practically spilling from her kimono. Two tails waved behind her as she stepped forward. Naruto would have loved to admire the way her tits jiggled or how plump her ass was, but the narrow look in her golden eyes cooled any lust he might have felt. This was a battle. Fuck yes, I am. Did you see what just happened? That little runt took the most powerful magic attack I've ever seen head on like it was nothing. Rainier said with a shriek. If you're gonna give up, then go curl up in that corner. Kaneko pointed to a corner on the other side of the room. Let the badasses handle this.
Fuck you. I am a badass. Then prove it. Rainier swore like a sailor as she clambered to her feet. Akeno laughed at her, but the other fallen angel sent her a vicious glare. Kaneko ignored them both and stepped forward, directly into Lilith's vision. The young-looking girl stared at Kaneko with impassive eyes that seemed almost dead. There didn't seem to be a hint of emotion there.
You ready for this, Rossi? Who is Rossi? Asked Rosweiss as she stood side by side with Kaneko. While Kaneko and Rosweiss squared off with Lilith alongside their companions, Naruto turned his attention back to Yami, his other half who was watching the girls with a complicated expression. Something about it sent a jolt through Naruto. It felt like he was staring at himself in the mirror during one of his more vulnerable moments. However, Yami noticed him staring and quickly mastered his expression.
Quite the harem you've got there. I'm going to enjoy breaking them in front of you, he said, licking his lips.
I would never let you touch them, Naruto said. Who said anything about you letting me? Yami chuckled as dark energy surrounded him. I'm going to defeat you, but I won't kill you. I will strip you of your power and keep you alive, and then I will take my time breaking these girls you've become so fond of. I will let you watch as I destroy their minds and bodies one by one.
As he spoke, Yami's body began changing. His hair became jagged like spikes, his body seemed to grow bigger and buffer, the muscles of his arms, shoulders, and legs straining against his clothes, and the whisker marks on his cheeks became thick. Bars went across his blood-red eyes.
This was Sage Mode. An evil Sage Mode. Naruto could practically feel the vile emotions wafting from Yami's body as he took in more of the world's hatred. Yami did not stop there. Like Naruto, he had a Raikudo Sennin mode as well. 9 black orbs appeared around his body like orbiting satellites as a cloak formed of black chakra covered him from the neck to his feet. It looked like an inverse of Naruto's cloak.
Naruto felt something inside of him harden and grow cold, like ice was covering his insides, and yet there was a fire burning inside of him. Whatever this man was, he was no longer a part of Naruto. They were connected. However, they had become entirely different people. Naruto could not afford to show this man any sympathy if he wanted to protect the people he loved.
Raikudo Sennin Modo activated. Kurama's chakra cloak activated. The power welling up inside of him threatened to burst out of him. He took a slow breath as 10 black orbs appeared around him. Reaching out to grab 2 of those orbs, Naruto let them transform into a pair of shortened bow staffs. The other truth-seeking balls remained in sphere form, but he would change them as needed at a moment's notice. Gold light flickered around him as he took a step forward. The ground cracked. Naruto disappeared. A second after he disappeared, Naruto was in Yami's face, swinging the bow staff in his left hand so quickly it was barely a flicker. Yami intercepted the attack. Their clash created a shockwave that rippled through the chamber, cracked the ground beneath them, and caused the two battles happening simultaneously alongside theirs to stop. Naruto gritted his teeth and snarled at Yami. I will never let you touch them.
Yes, that's it. Let me feel your hatred for me. Ha 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 ha. This is exactly what I want from you. Come on, Naruto. Show me how much you can hate. Then, when I've left you defeated and broken, we can let your hatred grow even more when I take your women and break them. I'll turn them into fuck dolls. And you won't be able to do a thing about it.
Yami's ranting caused something inside of Naruto to snap. With a howl that sounded more like an animal than a man, Naruto took control of the 8 truth-seeking orbs hovering around him and transformed them into spears that shot at Yami from every direction. With a wide grin, Yami leapt back and began swatting the truth-seeking orbs away with the ones he wielded in each hand. He expertly struck them like he knew where they would be before even Naruto did. Seeing this caused Naruto's hatred for Yami to increase, caused it to surge and boil like nothing else. He raised his hand into the air, creating a single Rasengan, and then let one of the truth-seeking orbs enter the Rasengan. What formed was a pitch-black sphere of swirling energy. It didn't seem like such a big threat, certainly nothing like the Rasenshuriken or the Yoden Rasenshuriken. Naruto only realized his mistake after he threw. By then it was too late. All he could do was race over to the others and protect them as best he could. The yin-yang Rasenshuriken slammed into the ground at Yami's feet, and the eruption caused everything around them to go black. Devil Ninja. Ha! Take that. Revel and Lefei stood side by side and combined their magic. A powerful sunburst of fire erupted from Revel's magic circle. It was nothing special, just an extremely powerful explosion of fire magic. On the other hand, Lefei's magic circle produced a powerful tornado that engulfed the fire. Rather than snuffing it, the tornado and fire merged together, mixing to create a raging inferno that swept across the battlefield. Nearly 24 or so modified dragons that were in the way of their attack became engulfed. Their agonized screams were drowned out by the inferno's blaze. The attack ripped through the enemy forces, surprisingly not hitting a single ally, and only after nearly a minute had passed did the attack dissipate. What remained was a trench of thoroughly scorched earth. None of the dragons who'd been caught up in the attack remained, having been reduced to ash that blew away on the wind. Even some of the dragons who'd merely been close to the attack were dead, their bodies black and scorched, like charbroiled chicken. Some of the enemies further out had spontaneously combusted and were running around on fire. They would eventually die too.
That was a nice job, Lefei said with good cheer. She was smiling vibrantly like a child. You're really talented with magic.
Revel smiled just a bit. Thank you. The smile left. Is something wrong? Asked Lefei. I was just thinking about how this was way too easy. Should this battle be so easy? Do you really think this is too easy? Yes, I do. Something isn't right here.
Revel furrowed her brow and studied the battlefield. Biku, Kuroka, and Fenrir were demolishing their enemies with ease. They tore through the battlefield like a hurricane, never staying in one place for too long. Xenovia was standing with Gasper, still in his Balor release the beast. Kitsune variation. Like the members of Team Valley, they were destroying their enemies. Xenovia attacked with ferocious swings and Gasper supported her with his ability to create shadow monsters. The members of Sona's peerage had already slammed into the enemy forces from behind and were crushing them. A massive dragon made of ice was lashing out at everything nearby. Flashes of light and explosions dotted the landscape as one of her servants attacked. Tsubaki was close by as well, using her Naginata to cut through the enemy forces. They were having a harder time than Revel's group, but it wasn't like they were suffering too many losses. Mixed among them were the vampires from the Carmilla faction who, while not as good at killing as their groups were still doing an admirable job of fighting off the modified dragons. A little ways off, Queen Carmilla was attacking with a sword of all things. She was quite good. A pair of modified dragons had her in their sights. They roared as though issuing a challenge and tried to attack with dragon breath. Fire so powerful it blazed white erupted from their mouths and enclosed on Queen Carmilla, who merely swung her sword, slashing through both attacks and forcing them to disperse. After that, a thick mist poured from her body, surrounded the dragons, and engulfed them. They began choking. Revel knew about a vampire's ability to create fog, but this seemed vastly different from the fog of a normal vampire. As the modified dragons choked and gurgled like they were drowning, Queen Carmilla walked up to them. swung her sword several times so fast Ravel could barely see it, and then walked past them. The two modified dragons were cut into multiple segments. They fell apart.
While surveying the battle, Ravel was trying to figure out why she felt such unease. Surely there was something about this battle that was bothering her. Unfortunately, it wasn't until a loud roar filled her ears that she realized what. Reinforcements. Flying toward them was a large swarm of black dots that were growing larger with every passing second. Ravel couldn't make them out at first, but she didn't need to. The roars filling the air said enough. More modified dragons were coming their way, a lot more. Oh. Well, that isn't good, LeFay muttered. Can you tell me how many there are? Asked Ravel. Give me a minute, LeFay said. She created a magic circle that was different from her normal ones. It acted as a magnifying glass. Aimed at the swarm, she was able to see the modified dragons flying toward them as if they were standing right next to her.
LeFay sucked in a breath. I can't tell you how many there are because I don't think I can accurately count them. But I can tell you the group coming toward us is much larger than the one we're fighting. I was afraid you would say that. Ravel knew she couldn't let them be caught between these two forces. Their group was powerful, but they were exhausted, and this new force was fresh. Even if they were at full strength, it was doubtful they would be able to face this group head-on. It would be even more impossible now that they were exhausted. Help me get to Queen Carmilla, Ravel said to LeFay. You got it. Despite the dire situation, LeFay responded in a cheerful voice.
The two began moving toward Queen Carmilla, who had just finished off another modified dragon. Like them, she seemed to have noticed the army coming toward them. It was hard to tell if her face had paled or not because it was already so white. Ravel imagined, however, that the vampire queen was definitely feeling fear. A pair of dragons tried to get in their way, but Ravel and LeFay combined fire and wind to create 1,000 burning wind blades. The combination attack tore the dragons apart before they could put up a fight. Queen Carmilla! Ravel shouted. Queen Carmilla turned and gave her a wan smile. Young Ravel, it seems you have noticed the threat as well. Our forces cannot go up against another army. They are much too exhausted.
Ravel nodded. I know. That's why I was thinking we should retreat to a more defensible location.
Is there a location like that? Asked Queen Carmilla, her voice bemused. I do not mean to put a damper on your plan, but was this mountain you selected not the most defensible location around for miles? There are no better defensible locations than this one, unless you mean to have us travel back to our village.
Ravel shook her head. That wouldn't be a good idea. It would just invite them to attack your village. Rather than simply finding a location we could defend, I was thinking we could limit the number of enemies they can attack with. I think we could also lure them into a trap.
And how would we do that? Asked Queen Carmilla, who merely sounded flabbergasted now. Indeed, Ravel could understand why the vampire queen would be confused. They had maybe 5 minutes before the modified dragon army was upon them, and that was much too short a time to build a proper fortification. We're going underground, Ravel said before explaining her plan. She listed off exactly what she wanted, which caused Queen Carmilla's eyes to widen. How do you plan on doing that? Asked a shocked Queen Carmilla. LeFay. Ravel turned to Naruto's contracted magician. Can you dig us a tunnel underground using magic? I can. How far underground do you want to go? Asked LeFay. Ravel bit her lip. Far enough that an attack from these dragons won't reach us. At least 200 meters. LeFay breathed out a sigh. You ask for a lot. I'll do my best. But you have to protect me while I'm working. Ravel nodded and turned to Queen Carmilla, a question in her eyes. This entire plan would hinge on whether the vampires' forces could defend LeFay while she worked. The queen seemed to understand this and took a deep breath. We will do our best to protect you, she said at last.
Thank you, said Ravel. I guess I'd better get to work, LeFay joked.
Since it looked like they had a plan in place, Ravel placed a hand to her ear and began speaking into her communicator and told everyone else her plan. She didn't tell them everything since there wasn't enough time. Ravel only told them enough to convince them to close ranks. The first to arrive was Elmenhild. The girl was covered in blood, but it didn't look like most of it was hers. The only injury Ravel noticed was the wound on her head and the way her left arm dangled uselessly at her side, though it was still a pretty serious injury. Her arm was probably broken. Azazel arrived not long after Elmenhild did, followed by the members of Ria's peerage, Team Valley, and Sona's peerage. All the other vampires under Queen Carmilla also formed ranks, creating a circle around LeFay as she activated her magic to begin digging a tunnel underground.
They're coming. Revel shouted loudly enough for everyone to hear. Create a shield.
The first group of modified dragons reached them, roaring as they unleashed dragon breath. Blazing hot fire slammed against a foggy shield created by the vampires. Sadly, these dragons were fresh and the vampires exhausted. The attack burned right through the shield. Applause wall. Just when it looked like they would be struck by the combined dragon breath, a powerful barrier appeared around their group, taking the attack head-on. Flames splashed against the shield, roaring as though angry. The barrier rippled but held. The flames soon dispersed, unable to penetrate the barrier.
The one who had cast the barrier was a young woman with gorgeous white hair and bluish-green eyes. She was not very tall, but she wasn't short either. Her height was average for a Japanese woman in high school. She had a large chest barely contained by the shirt of her school uniform and appeared to be a very proper woman.
Revel knew her. The girl's name was Momo Hanakai, a member of Sona's peerage. She was one of Sona's bishops. The ability she had just used was an artificial sacred gear created by none other than Azazel and calibrated for her use. It took the form of bracelets and had the ability to create barriers within a certain distance from the caster.
Oh ho. Now that the first attack has been blocked, I guess it's time for us to release an offensive, Biku muttered. Right you are, Biku. Nya haha. Come on, Fenrir, Kuroka said with a grin. While Biku jumped on his golden cloud and Fenrir released a howl that could shake even a god's resolve, Kuroka created several magic circles around a group of modified dragons, which suddenly froze as if they had been trapped in time. That wasn't it, however. The space around them was distorting as Kuroka manipulated the area to trap her enemies in another space. Once her enemies were trapped, she unleashed a toxic purple cloud that filled the space she created. The modified dragons howled in pain as they were killed.
Baiko and Fenrir attacked up close. Baiko used his staff to great effect as Fenrir ripped into his opponent with his claws and fangs. Fenrir was an incredibly powerful creature. His god-killing fangs were so powerful they were able to kill even the most powerful of beings, including gods. While his claws weren't as powerful, they could easily pierce Issei's scale mail.
However, even though these two were powerful in their own right, the modified dragon's numbers proved too much. Superior strength could only do so much against overwhelming numbers. Biku was hit with a dragon breath from several directions. He screamed as burns appeared on his body and he fell. At the same time, multiple modified dragons leapt on Fenrir and began tearing at him. Kuroka. Get them out of there, Revel ordered. Nya ha ha ha, just leave this to me, Kuroka said with a bright grin.
Kuroka didn't rely on poison this time. Her fists glowed as she covered them in Tuki. The nails of her hand lengthened to an incredible 10 centimeters, and then she slashed the air, though nothing seemed to happen at first. The enraged cry of dragons tore through the air seconds later as several blood burst from several wounds that appeared on their scaled flesh. Nya ha ha ha. I got this idea from how Arthur uses Caliburn. How do you like it? Kuroka asked, laughing as she continued attacking. Now if your chance, Fenrir.
Fenrir howled as he raced over to Biku, let the monkey man land on his back, and traveled back toward their group. The moment he did, Yura stepped forward and held out her hands.
Twinkle Aegis. Protect us. Yura used her own artificial sacred gear to create a massive shield of light. The modified dragons that tried to attack Baiko and Fenrir after their retreat slammed into the shield and bounced off. This did not deter them. They unleashed roars and continued hammering away at the shield with both physical attacks and dragon breath. Yura grunted as the flames and bodies struck her shield. I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but there's no way my shield will last long against creatures this powerful, Yura told them. Just hold on for as long as you can, Revel urged. She looked at LeFay, who was still in the process of digging out a tunnel for them. She could see the hole being created. It wasn't very big yet. The tunnel they needed had to be big enough to fit all of their enemies inside and deep enough that they couldn't escape. Sweat poured from LeFay's forehead as she struggled to keep her magic working. She must have been burning through magical energy like nothing else. The shield finally shattered. The modified dragons roared as they charged down. Revel gritted her teeth as she ordered the Rias Peerage, Sona Peerage, Team Valley, and the vampires to fight back. It wasn't long before the stench of blood filled the air. Magical attacks flew everywhere, People were ripped apart by claws and fangs, and dragon breath burned numerous vampires to a crisp. Kuroko once more used her space manipulation to cut apart nearly half a dozen modified dragons, but then she was slammed into by a dragon that attacked from her blind spot. Fenrir tried to aid her, but he was struck with a claw to the head. The attack sent him hurtling to the ground. At the same time, Sona's peerage tried to set up a defensive perimeter, but there were simply too many modified dragons swarming around them. Yura and Momo were mauled by a dragon's claws. They screamed as they went down. Yura. Momo. Saji shouted. Damn you. Saji activated all 4 of his sacred gears in tandem. Black flames covered his body and took on the form of the black dragon Vitra himself. There was no heat when he erupted like this. Instead, what Revel and the others felt was a chilling cold.
Revel wanted to tell him to stop. Vitra promotion allowed him to use the powers of Vitra, but it came at the cost of his sanity. He entered a berserker state that only Issei could bring him out of. She said nothing, however, because she understood how dire their situation was. With a dragon-like roar, Saji flew into the air and began attacking the modified dragons with the power of a dragon king. His black flames swept across the enemies swarming in the skies, burning them. Modified dragons were consumed. Strange tentacles lashed out and latched onto the modified dragons, absorbing their aura to increase Saji's own power. Like this, he began decimating the enemy forces. But even he could only last for so long. Saji eventually ran out of power, unable to fight off the sheer overwhelming numbers of the enemies arrayed against them. He was struck by numerous modified dragons who tore his Vitra body apart. Saji appeared from within the black flames as they dispersed, falling headfirst toward the ground. He was fortunately caught by Sona, who was in turn protected by Tsubaki, Benya, and Lugaro. I've done it, Lefei suddenly shouted. Revel turned toward the Lefei. There was a massive tunnel just in front of the young woman. It was easily wide enough to fit a Dragon King inside and seemed to be quite deep. Everyone. We're traveling underground. Queen Carmilla. Once we do, I'd like you and the other vampires to create a fog barrier around the entrance. That should buy us some time. Revel said. Consider it done, Queen Carmilla shouted back. Like that, the exhausted army traveled into the tunnel. Had they remained a few seconds longer, they would have seen Tep's castle and the surrounding village erupt in black and white flames. They traveled through the tunnels Lefei had carved out with magic, moving as quickly as they could without leaving anyone behind. There were still over 3,000 vampires within their forces. Despite having so many people, they were able to travel fast thanks to many of the vampires transforming into bats and flying through the tunnel. The tunnel itself was 5 kilometers long and had many branching pathways. That was why it took Lefei so long to create, because she wasn't just creating a straight-shot tunnel, but one that separated into many smaller tunnels like the roots of a tree. As they emerged from the other side, Revel looked at Queen Carmilla, who nodded and used her ability to manipulate fog to block off the entrance. That should not only keep them from getting out, at least for a little while, it should also confuse them, Queen Carmilla said. Good. Now we just need to wait for a bit. I want as many modified dragons to find their way into this tunnel as possible. Revel closed her eyes and waited in tense silence, studiously ignoring the thick feeling of worry permeating everyone there. Their forces were exhausted. Everyone had been battling for such a long time, and they didn't have much fight left in them. It was unknown to Revel how much time had passed exactly, but a loud explosion of power erupted near the entrance. Queen Carmilla flinched as a modified dragon slammed against her fog. It held. However, then another dragon appeared and slammed into it as well. The vampire queen grunted as she held out both hands and made the fog thicker. I won't be able to keep this up for long, she said in a strained voice. Just a few more minutes, Revel said. No. Just 60 more seconds. Queen Carmilla gritted her teeth, which caused Elmenhild to look at her queen in worry. Revel began counting down from 60 to 1. More dragons arrived. They slammed into the shield. A small trickle of blood escaped Queen Carmilla's nose as she strained against the power she was holding back. Revel, can't you see my queen is suffering? Elmenhilda snapped. I can't, hold on. Queen Carmilla fell to a knee, the barrier shattered, and modified dragons surged forward. They were cut down by Azazel, who created a powerful sword of light. He swung and sliced off a head. Then he spun on the balls of his feet, dodged a claw swipe, and impaled the attacking modified dragon through the chest.
He moved so fast that Revel couldn't even see it. Before long, he was standing before the entrance, blocking the modified dragons from attacking everyone else. I will hold them off for as long as you need, so do what you need to. Azazel shouted. With Azazel protecting them, Revel was able to safely count down the time to activate their trap. She wanted to go longer. The longer they let the modified dragons enter the tunnel, the better, but she knew time was not on their side. Now, LeFay! Revel shouted. At that moment, LeFay tapped her foot against the ground, and a brilliant magic circle flared into existence. Barely a second passed before the tunnel entrance exploded into a brilliant shower of white-hot flames. The dragons trapped inside the tunnel roared, but even that was soon cut off as the tunnel collapsed, burying the dragons alive.
What happened? Asked Elmenhilda as she pulled a handkerchief from her dress and began wiping the blood on Queen Carmilla's face away. I see. You planted magic mines inside of the tunnels, then collapsed them when the dragons entered, Queen Carmilla determined. Revel nodded. We couldn't fight so many in a head-on confrontation, so I decided that burying them alive would be more advisable. I doubt we managed to kill many of them, but it would be worth it if we could even take out a couple hundred.
It was a good plan, Queen Carmilla admitted. I'm pretty impressed, Azazel added as he walked over. Blood ran down his face and arms from several cuts, but he seemed unharmed otherwise. That's just the kind of plan I'd expect from Naruto's manager. Revel smiled, but she knew nothing was over yet. After all, Naruto still had to rescue Rias and Kiba. Devil Ninja. Naruto groaned as he opened his eyes, blinking several times, then flinched when what felt like a warhammer slammed into his head. He grimaced, lamenting his mistake. What had he been thinking, using such a high-powered attack inside of a building like that? Was he an idiot?
I believe the answer to that question is self-evident.
No comment from the peanut gallery please. Several large chunks of debris were sitting on Naruto's chest, but he easily pushed those off and stood up. He checked himself over. Patting his arms, legs, and chest, Naruto released a sigh when he realized he was not injured. Once he had confirmed that he was healthy, Naruto looked at the area around him. The castle was gone. He could see the sky now. The surrounding walls that had made up Tep's castle had been destroyed, leaving nothing between him and the outside. Eng! A groan to his left. Naruto turned around when he saw none other than Yami pushing himself out of the wreckage, wincing and rubbing his head. Damn you, have you gotten even more reckless than when you and I were one person? I don't want to hear that from someone who became the leader of a terrorist organization, Naruto snapped.
Yami didn't respond right away as he stood up and shook his head. It was like he was attempting to clear out the cobwebs.
Naruto used that moment to make some clones, which spread out and began searching through the wreckage, looking for his friends. They quickly found Rias, Kiba, Kaneko, and Asia. The four of them were together. Rias had protected the other three from the wreckage. When the Naruto clone removed the debris from their bodies, Rias sent it a glare. What we're thinking? Do you want to get us all killed? She asked. Clone Naruto raised his hands. Hey, don't blame me. I'm just a clone. It was the boss's decision to use such a powerful technique. Naruto gets your experience when you disperse, right? In that case, I am going to take it out on you. In fact, sit down right now. But sit down. Yes, ma'am. Clone Naruto sat in Caesar as Rias, with Kaneko and Asia on either side of her and Kiba behind her nursing his injury, proceeded to lecture the clone on why his reckless behavior would not be tolerated. To his credit, the clone did not say a single thing to dispute her. Perhaps he agreed with Rias, perhaps he just understood that it was better to let a woman vent. Either way, he took his lecturing like a true man. Yes, a true man. The other clones quickly found everyone else. Akeno and Rainier were together, having protected each other from falling debris. Rosweiss was with Irina. Valley and Issei were also together, having been battling Rizvam. He also found the two villains working alongside Yami. Rizvam and Lilith had emerged from the debris none the worse for wear. Given the dirt covering Lilith's body, it was clear to Naruto that Rizvam had let her protect him from the falling debris, which seemed kind of pathetic. You are quite the dangerous element, Rizvam said to Naruto as they regrouped with Yami. Naruto shrugged. You say that like you aren't dangerous. Rizvam chuckled. True. I guess I can't say anything without sounding like a hypocrite. Still, I wouldn't drop a fucking ceiling on my own head. Sometimes to trick the enemy, you have to use yourself as bait. A likely story. HMPH. It seems our plan to lure you into a trap has failed, Yami said.
As if his words were some kind of signal, Lilith waved her hands to create a portal. But just before the portal solidified, it was disrupted. A massive undulation ripped through it. Then the portal exploded into energy particles. "What the?" Rizavum shouted as Yami looked to his left.
A figure flew in and landed next to Naruto. Her modest chest was covered by two black bandages forming an X shape, she wore puffy shorts, and her black hair contrasted with her pure white skin. Ophis crossed her arms as she glared at the three people. "I finally found you," she said to Naruto. "And it seems you are having some trouble. Do you mind if I take on my little clone? Do you think you can beat her?" asked Naruto. HMPH. Of course. Lilith might have most of my power, but look at how she uses it. It's clear to me that she hasn't mastered using my power yet. Now is the perfect time to strike. Okay then. Feel free to take her on. Those were all the words Ophis needed before. Like a rocket, she blasted off her feet and slammed into Lilith before the much smaller girl could do anything. A blink later and the two of them disappeared. Ophis had created a portal and hurtled them both through it. Damn it. That bitch just stole my bodyguard. Rizavum swore. You stole that bitch's power first, Naruto exclaimed. So fuck you. Rizavum whirled around, a snarl on his face, but Yami stepped forward and silenced him with a raised arm. The look on his face was dark. However, he appeared relatively calm, at least compared to his companion. Are you sure you want to do this, Naruto? He asked. I was willing to let you live now that my plan has failed, but I am still stronger than you. That may be so, but don't pretend ignorance. Naruto grinned as the members of his group gathered around him.
He pointed at Yami and declared. The truth is, you've grown weaker. The last time we fought, you've had about 70% of my power, but now you only have about 65%. I figured out your weakness. So long as I don't use Sage Mode and experience life to the fullest, you will continue to grow weaker and weaker. That's why you decided to use this half-assed plan to kill me, isn't it?
Yami's expression darkened, but that was just more proof that Naruto's theory was correct. It was actually obvious when Naruto thought about it. He and Yami were like an hourglass. The power they had was shared between them. When Naruto used Sage Mode, that power traveled to Yami because the world's hatred filled them, but when Naruto didn't use Sage Mode, the power remained with him, though what he lost didn't return. It wasn't until Kuroka suggested having an all-night orgy with Rias and the others that he realized the truth of the matter. His happiness was the key to regaining his power. The happier he was, the less of an effect this world's hatred had on him, and the more power he regained from Yami.
I'm not surprised you managed to figure it out, though I didn't expect you to get it so soon, Yami said at last. It looks like I will need to accelerate my plans. No, it looks like I really do need to kill you now before I lose any more power.
Just try it if you can, Naruto declared as once more Raikudo Senin Moto and Kurama's chakra cloak flared to life.
Naruto knew he couldn't let his fight against Yami anywhere near his friends, and so he put on a burst of speed, appearing right beside his nemesis and punching his dark half in the face. Or that was his intention. Yami twisted his body, grabbed Naruto's arm, and threw him away. As Naruto soared through the air, his opponent appeared above him and attempted to slam Naruto's own Shishi Renden on his torso. Naruto replaced himself with a log. As the log exploded like it had TNT stuck to its surface, Naruto struck the ground feet first, bent his knees, and pushed off. The ground exploded as Naruto shot toward Yami. He stretched out his hand, created a Rasengan, and threw it. Yami dodged the Rasengan like he'd expected it, then turned around and blocked the kick as the Rasengan turned into a Naruto clone that attacked him with a heel drop. A shockwave erupted from them. Naruto closed the distance and tried to strike Yami before he could block him, but Yami knew Naruto's tricks and replaced himself with Naruto's clone. Wearing a grimace as he saw an image of him killing himself, Naruto flapped his wings and looked around. He couldn't see Yami at all. Issei, Valley, and the others were locked in combat with Rizavum, except for Rias. He couldn't see her anywhere anymore. For a moment, he feared Yami might have gone after her, but that fear proved to be unfounded when a loud screeching sound reached his ears. Naruto looked up as a Rasenshuriken came hurtling at him. It was traveling fast enough to break the sound barrier. Knowing better than to let this attack hit, he dodged to the side. The Rasenshuriken slammed into the ground and detonated in an explosion of wind so fierce the battle below stopped.
powerful force wind slammed into everyone as a large dome expanded. It was a good thing no one had been in the blast zone, or they'd have been ripped to shreds by the cutting millions of microscopic cutting wind blades. Yami descended from above after his jutsu missed. He launched out his foot, attempting to perform a heel drop on Naruto's head, but it was blocked when Naruto raised his arms in a cross. The attack might have been blocked, but Naruto's bones rattled when the foot hit. Yami was incredibly strong. If he didn't know any better, he would say his opponent was using Tuki to strengthen himself. As the two of them continued battling, Naruto realized he still wasn't strong enough to win on his own. Yami still had the majority of power between them. Since a battle like this one was mostly a battle of attrition, his darker half had a clear and distinct advantage. Ha, ha, ha. Naruto's shoulders heaved as he struggled to breath. His chest was in pain, sharp like a blade. He glared at Yami. On the other hand, his opponent wore a dark grin. Looks like you still aren't strong enough to defeat me, Yami said. Naruto continued to glare, but then he saw something that made him smile. You're right. I'm not strong enough to defeat you on my own, so I guess it's a good thing I'm not alone. Huh? Yami asked stupidly. That was when a voice appeared behind him. Extinguishing star. At that moment, Rias was standing several dozen meters behind Yami, a massive sphere of highly compressed demonic power above her head, which had taken the form of a sphere with a mixture of crimson and black energy swirling around it. Naruto had never seen anything quite like it. This was vastly different from the way Searsex used his power of destruction. The sheer amount of annihilating force trapped within that sphere was enough to make even him shiver. Rias threw the sphere at Yami. It moved slowly. In fact, it was so slow that Yami should have been able to dodge it, but contrary to what should have happened, Yami found that he was being pulled toward it instead of moving away from it. His eyes bulged as an incredible sucking force pulled him in. It was like the sphere was a black hole. It wasn't long before his left hand touched the sphere. A shocked howl escaped his mouth as his entire hand and arm up to the elbow disintegrated. It was just gone, as though it had never existed. Now getting desperate, Yami unleashed all of his considerable power in an explosion that crashed against Rias's technique, destabilizing it. The sphere undulated before detonating. An eruption of destructive power flew in all directions, showering the ground like meteors falling from the sky. Whatever the power hit disintegrated into nothing. Naruto whistled at the destruction wrought. Damn, how long have you been working on this technique? Asked Naruto as Rias flew over to him.
She smiled and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I've been working on it for a while. You might not know this, but a few months after we began sleeping together, my demonic energy changed. It's more powerful now. However, it is hard to control that power, so I can't use the power of destruction like my brother can. I created this technique with Ophus's help.
Ophus, huh? Seems she's helping everyone. What? Nothing. Anyway, while that attack of yours is incredible, it doesn't look like it killed our opponent. Naruto turned toward Yami, who floated quite a distance away from them, gripping his now stump of a left arm. There were other wounds littering his body. He had a hole in his left leg, a chunk had been taken out of his right shoulder, and blood freely ran down his body. The hatred he directed toward them was impressive. If looks could kill, Naruto was certain he and Rias would have been reduced to atoms. You two, damn you both. I won't let you get away with this. Just wait. This won't be the last you'll see of me. Before Naruto or Rias could stop him, Yami created a portal with a wave of his right hand and charged through it, leaving them, and more importantly, leaving Rizvam to fend for himself.
He ran away, Rias said. Yeah, Naruto agreed. He turned toward her. Rias, I'm glad you're okay.
Rias faced him as well. Me too. Thank you for coming to my rescue. Despite what just happened, no, because of what just happened, Naruto pulled Rias close, feeling a desperate need to have this woman pressed against him. She didn't resist. Leaning into him, Rias wrapped her arms around his neck, leaned in close, and pressed their lips together.
Devil Ninja, Rizvam managed to escape. Naruto didn't know how since he hadn't been battling the douche, but Valley had been pretty angry about how his grandfather had slipped from his fingers once again.
Naruto returned home with Rias and Kiba having been rescued. They didn't look like they were any worse for wear. Well, Kiba was a little beat up, but the shape he was in hadn't been anywhere near as bad as Naruto had been expecting. All the superfluous wounds on Kiba's body had been easily healed with Asia's Twilight Healing. So Yami didn't mistreat you or anything? Asked Naruto. Rias shook her head. No. I expected he would, but aside from our first confrontation and when he tried to spring his trap, he didn't come anywhere near me. It was almost like he was afraid of me. That did not sound like Yami at all, but perhaps there was something more to all this that Naruto was missing.
He and Rias were lounging in bed, one as the day they were born. Sweat covered their bodies as they snuggled together. The scent of sex hung so heavily in the air anyone else would have probably choked.
Immediately after returning home, Naruto and Rias had locked themselves in their bedroom and had sex without stopping for an entire day. No one had been able to enter. Even Ophis, who had tried to come in, was repelled. Naruto knew the dragon god was even now just outside the door, pouting. Come to think of it, I promised her we'd have sex.
He would make good on that promise. After all, Naruto never gave up and never went back on his word. That was his ninja way. Believe it? What? Nothing. Naruto shook his head and pretended he didn't just say something really stupid. Anyway, I am glad we were able to rescue you and Kiba. When I heard you two had been captured by Yami, I was pretty angry at myself for letting you two go off on your own. It's not like you could have foreseen this would happen, Ria said as she pressed her full body against his and began stroking his jaw. He liked the feeling of her nipples rubbing against his body. I feel like we should have. Naruto disagreed. We knew the Chaos Brigade had something to do with the vampires. We should have known something would happen. Also, our luck is terrible when it comes to matters like this. Seriously terrible. I don't think there's another group of people who've had more trouble than we have. I guess not, Rias agreed before she began kissing Naruto's chest. His breathing hitched as she shifted until she was straddling his hips. As she kissed and licked his chest, Rias ground her firm, plump ass against his crotch, causing his erection to swell. Unable to resist, Naruto grabbed her plentiful butt and began kneading the flesh, enjoying the plump sensation filling his hands. While Naruto would always say Rias Grimori's breasts were her most charming features, that was not to say her boobs were all she had. Her ass was also something to be cherished. Firm, round, and lush, her butt would turn any straight man into jelly. The way said firm ass was currently grinding against his one caused pleasant tingles to well up inside of him. He wanted more than anything to take her from behind while grasping these amazing twin cheeks. And yet, just before they could go a step further, someone knocked at the door. I hate to break you two up, but don't you think it's time you came out of there? Said the voice from the other side. It was Revel. Azazel is here. He said he has something important to talk to you about. Naruto and Rias groaned and complained, but it wasn't like they could deny the man. They left the bed, put on some clothes, and opened the door to find Revel and Ophis standing just outside. The pair wrinkled their nose the moment the door opened. You two reek, Revel said. Go take a shower before heading into the living room, please. Rias and Naruto wore matching embarrassed blushes at having someone tell them they stink so openly, but neither of them could deny her words. They had, indeed, done nothing but have sex since returning. It was all too obvious they would smell. The pair took a quick shower. They may or may not have fooled around a bit. After getting dried off and dressed, they walked into the living room, where they found Azazel sitting on the couch and drinking a coffee. He looked somewhat abashed. Meanwhile, Roswai stood beside him with a red face and tears in her eyes. He probably wanted alcohol. Naruto could well imagine Azazel asking for alcohol, Roswai's telling him no, and Azazel saying something thoughtless to make the Valkyrie upset. Finally got out of bed. I see, Azazel said when they arrived. He was grinning like he knew what they'd been up to. Rias ignored the jab as she sat on the couch with Naruto. Azazel, to what do we owe the pleasure of your visit? I assume it's something important. There had been a lot of trouble happening lately. Heaven was under assault, the underworld was experiencing a lot of turbulence, and the human world had terrorist attacks happening all over the world. As the former Governor-General of the Grigori, Azazel should have been helping deal with these threats. That he was here meant he had something important to discuss. Getting right to the point. Well, that's fine. I don't have much time anyway. Azazel took a sip from his mug before speaking again. As you know, I'm currently stationed in Romania to act as ambassador to the vampires. I'm also helping with the cleanup. Yes, we are aware, Rias said. I take it your visit has something to do with that. That's right. Azazel nodded seriously. While we were going through the wreckage of Tep's castle, we found something I believe your damn peer servant will be interested in.
Can you call for him and come with me?
Naruto and Rias looked at each other. Neither of them knew what Azazel wanted Gasper for.
Devil Ninja. It was hard to believe Naruto would be back in Romania so soon, but stranger things had happened. He was walking with Azazel, Gasper, and Rias. They were once more at the Carmilla faction's mansion. The hallway they traveled down was unfamiliar to him. It was not one he had traveled through during their short time here. They eventually reached a door, which Azazel opened and gestured them inside. Valerie. Gasper gasped in shock and sorrow. The room on the other side of the door had the appearance of a simple bedroom. Plain but nice decorations lined the wooden walls, a few potted plants dotted the corners, and there was a bed stationed near the room's only window. Resting on the bed was a young woman with short blonde hair and pale skin. She looked a few years older than Naruto. Her eyes were closed, and she was lying in repose, hands at her sides as if she was just sleeping. There was a certain captivating quality about her. Her doll-like appearance made Naruto realize this woman was a vampire. Valerie. Gasper stumbled over to the bed and slumped into the nearest chair. His eyes had not left Valerie's face. Tears formed in them and trailed down his cheek as he reached out, hesitated, and then reluctantly touched her hand, though he withdrew it seconds later as though he was afraid of breaking her. "This is Valerie Tepes?" asked Rias. Azazel nodded, a serious expression on his face, making him actually look like a leader for once.
"We discovered her in a sub-basement level directly beneath the one Yami was holding you in. After discovering her, we brought her here," Azazel explained.
"Is she?" Naruto hesitated to ask, but Azazel seemed to understand. "She's alive," he said. Gasper's head snapped in his direction, and Azazel explained more. "It seems Valerie's sacred gear is a subspecies. Her Sephiroth Grawl has a total of 3 holy grails instead of just 1. 2 of them were removed from her, but the last one was kept inside of her. My guess was the Chaos Brigade wanted to keep that one as a spare in case they needed it. Thanks to that, she is only in a death-like state, but she's not really dead."
Then if she's still alive," Gasper looked imploring at Azazel.
"She can be restored to life," Azazel stated. Those words seemed to be far too much for Gasper to bear, as he began openly weeping. Rias went over to him and swept the young Dhampir into a hug. Naruto sighed and looked away. He totally understood there was nothing sexual about this hug, but he would also admit that he didn't like seeing his girlfriend hug another man, even one who looked like a cute girl. "What would it take to restore Valerie to life?" asked Naruto. "That's a good question." Azazel sighed and scratched his beard. "We aren't sure right now. I plan on taking her to the Grigori's Primary Research Institute. We should be able to figure out how to bring her back there, but it might take a while, given the situation we've now found ourselves in." Naruto understood his words to mean the war with the Chaos Brigade, which was becoming even more chaotic now that the Titans had joined. It seemed dealing with one problem simply made others appear before them. The hero faction was defeated, but now they had to deal with Rizvam, the resurrected evil dragons, and the Titans from Greek mythology. The war was reaching a peak. Naruto knew it wouldn't be long before something big happened, and he would need to be ready for it. Chapter 58. Degozuru. Naruto ignored the heat washing over him as several explosions rang throughout the training room. All of his attention was focused on what he was doing. Sweat poured from his pores, stung his eyes, and dripped off his hair as he stood balanced on his hands, slowly lowered himself until his nose was touching the ground, then pushed himself back up.
995, 996.
997. All of Naruto's muscles were shaking as he did handstand push-ups, which he'd been doing since early this morning. Naruto had gotten up long before everyone else and come down here to train his body. War would be coming to the world. Yami would be leading them, and Naruto knew that if he wanted to help everyone else win, he needed to train and regain the power Yami had taken from him. The days after helping the vampires deal with their problems had been filled with training and sex, specifically orgies. Naruto had learned a while back that the key to regaining his original power was to enjoy life, and nothing brought more joy to his life than sleeping with the women he loved. Even this morning, when he had woken up, Naruto had been surrounded by a group of women. It had almost been a shame to get out of bed. 998. Several more explosions rocked the ground, causing the earth to tremble, and Naruto bent his elbows to keep his balance as he glanced at Kiba and Issei.
His 2 good friends were currently training together with Irina and Zenobia in what could only be called a free-for-all brawl. The four of them were attacking each other with incredible fervor.
Swords sprouted from the ground as Kiba created his holy demonic swords. Most of them were destroyed by Zenobia as she swung Durandal like it was lighter than a feather. Her single swing created a wave of powerful energy that swept over everything and destroyed it, though this didn't seem to deter Kiba, who created a wall made of swords and blocked her attack. The wall was destroyed moments later, not by Zenobia, but by Irina as she swooped down and sliced through them with her holy sword. It had already been damaged by Zenobia's awe-inspiring attack, so breaking it wasn't very hard. Irina flapped her angel wings before ascending back into the sky as Issei plowed into the ground where she had been seconds earlier. Decked from head to toe in his scale mail, Issei looked like a red dragon with a humanoid form. "You just barely escaped that ass-kicking, Irina," Issei gloated as a pair of cannons appeared on either shoulder, both of which began glowing a vibrant red as energy gathered in their muzzles. "But you won't be able to avoid this. Ha! You think I can't avoid those tiny balls of yours?" Irina asked with a laugh. "Go ahead and try to shoot your wad at me. See what happens." "I will." Issei didn't bother charging a full blast, which would have been dangerous and was also easy to dodge. Two energy spheres about the size of a human head shot from his cannons. They sailed toward Irina, who flitted away to dodge them, but the attacks followed the angel, much to her shock.
What the heck? When did you learn to fire heat-seeking missiles? These aren't heating-seeking missiles, fool. These are my new breast-seeking missiles.
Don't sound so proud about that. While Issei's words sounded utterly asinine, it was true that his attacks appeared to be seeking Irina's breasts and nothing else. They went straight for the tatas. Irina shrieked as she ducked, dodged, and dove away from them. She even did a few barrel rolls. Truly, Fox McCloud would have been proud. You kids are all so lively first thing in the morning. Naruto turned his head and, ignoring the blood rushing to his face, gazed at the smallish dragon woman kneeling beside him. Ophi's long black hair was hanging over one shoulder. She wore the same standard clothes as always, which meant the only thing covering her front was some tape crossed over her nipples in an X pattern. He'd always wondered about that. Was this a fashion statement of some kind? It always just seemed kinda random to him. You think so? Well, given that war is coming, I believe it only makes sense that we train as hard as we can, Naruto said as he once more began doing his handstand push-ups. 999, 1000.
Breathing out through his nose, Naruto tilted his body until his feet met the floor, then stood up and began stretching. He pulled his arms behind his back, locking his fingers and thrusting out his chest. It burned. The muscles in his chest and shoulders had become so tight it felt like a bowstring drawn taut enough to snap. Ophis tilted her head as she considered this before nodding slowly. There is no telling when Yami will strike, I guess. I'm more worried about what he said during our last confrontation, Naruto admitted. He said he was going to release Trihexa from its prison and seal it inside of himself to become its Jinchuriki. I heard Trihexa is exceedingly powerful. Perhaps even more powerful than anything else in this world. Ophis clicked her tongue in distaste. Trihexa isn't all that powerful. I could kill him at the height of my power, though that will be kinda hard for me to do now. I've heard that at its full power, Trihexa is on par with you and Great Red, Naruto stated carefully. Maybe in terms of sheer power, but it is also a beast with little in the way of intelligence, Ophis declared. I understand how to use my power much better than it does, so even if we are of comparable strength, it would never be able to win a straight fight with me at my full power. Naruto shrugged as he looked at the others in the training room with them. The four-way battle between Issei, Irina, Kiba, and Zenobia wasn't the only one taking place right now. Rosweiss and Kaneko were currently sparring against each other, with one of them hurtling high-level spells while the other used senjutsu to throw powerful attacks that detonated upon contact. Several dozen magic circles appeared around Rosweiss. Beams of condensed fire lanced down toward Kaneko, who used her supernatural grace and reflexes to dodge each attack before she flung a counter. Rosweiss did not have Kaneko's reflexes. When Kaneko attacked, she would maneuver one of her magic circles in front of her to take the senjutsu attack. This would destroy her magic circle but leave her unharmed. Since it looked like everyone was busy doing their own thing, Naruto decided to just leave them all to it. He traveled to the bathroom, took a quick shower, and got dressed in black slacks and an orange t-shirt with the silhouette of a nine-tailed fox on the front. He then traveled to Rias Gremry's office, opening the door and stepping inside.
There he found Rias, Revel, and Akino. His red-headed girlfriend and fiancé was diligently reading through several reports when he arrived, though she stopped and looked up to smile at him when he entered.
Naruto, training again? She asked. Yeah, and the others?
Still training. I see. Well, considering recent events, I can understand the need to train. I wish I could go train myself, but, she gave a wan smile as she looked at the several stacks of papers on her desk. As you can see, I'm pretty busy. Naruto nodded as he walked further into the room. Akino was standing behind Rias as per the usual. The woman was back to acting in her capacity as Rias Grimori's maid right-hand woman. On the other hand, Revel was sitting on the couch and scrolling through a tablet. He blinked at that. What are you doing, Revel? He asked. Oh. This is a new device jointly created by Azazel and Beelzebub. It's a tablet that allows me to access the demon net. With this, I can look up all the most recent information regarding the underworld, heaven, and anything related to the supernatural world. Revel paused here to show me the screen, which currently featured an article about Chaos Brigade sightings. I'm currently trying to determine where Yami and Rizaviam disappeared to. Have you found anything? Naruto asked. Revel shook her head. No. While there have been several attacks in the past few days, neither Yami or Rizaviam were leading them. Naruto withheld a sigh, though he couldn't stop himself from rubbing the bridge of his nose. Immediately following the events with the vampires, Rizaviam, Lilith, and Yami had vanished. No one had seen or heard from them since, though not for lack of trying. Azazel and Searsex had created several teams to scour the world for any sign of the two Chaos Brigade leaders. Their efforts had sadly come up blank. It was like the pair had vanished from this world. Naruto wandered over to the couch and plopped down beside Revel, who didn't look up as she continued scrolling through reports, articles, and forums. Akino wandered over to him and presented Naruto with a teacup. She placed it on the coffee table and poured steaming hot tea into his cup. He thanked her before taking a slow sip of the bitter liquid.
Yami said he was going to accelerate his plans, Naruto said at last. I guess that means he'll release Trihexa soon. I think that means we should be focused on finding out where Trihexa was sealed. We can probably prevent them from breaking the seal if we find it first. That's a lot easier said than done, Rias told him with a small frown. We don't even know where to begin looking. I heard Metatron is currently searching for where Trihexa is sealed along with his ninja and… Wait. Metatron has ninja? It's a recent thing. Haven't you noticed that he hasn't been here in a while? Apparently, after returning from heaven, Metatron went on to create his own ninja force. He's currently set up his own hidden village and is using it as his base of operations to search for Trihexa.
I didn't even realize that. Thinking on it now, it had been a while since Metatron had bothered him, but he hadn't thought about what that meant because he had been so busy with his training and learning more bedroom arts. Back when Metatron had first begun living with them, Naruto had told him many stories about the ninja from his old world. All of his stories had fascinated the ninja-obsessed Archangel. Perhaps that was why Metatron had gone on to create his own hidden village.
I really hope he doesn't go overboard, Naruto said.
I'm sure he'll be fine. Anyway, I think that's enough work for today, Rias said, stretching her arms above her head. We should get ready. We still have school, after all.
Devil ninja. Being a devil living in the human world wasn't easy. You trained your butt off during the morning, then went to school and spent hours listening to boring lectures, and then after all that was done, you went to the clubroom and performed your devil duties before going back home to have sex with your harem of beautiful women. Okay. So maybe that last problem was specifically a Naruto issue. It was still tiring.
As you all know, graduation is coming up for us seniors. That means Akino and I won't be around as much as we would like. I've been selected as the class representative for my class as well, so I'll be leaving school later than usual to work out the finer details with Sona. Fortunately, I'm not in charge of the ceremony itself. That is Sona's responsibility, Rias said, sitting behind her desk like always. At present, their group was gathered inside of the occult research clubroom. Rias had said she needed to speak to them about something important, so, club activities were put on hold for the time being. What she had to talk about was how the seniors would be graduating soon. Hard to believe so much time has passed. Graduation, huh? Naruto leaned his head back and let it rest against the couch as he stared at the ceiling. The familiar weight of Kaneko on his lap was comforting. It completely slipped my mind, but March is coming up soon. I'm not surprised it slipped your mind. It slipped mine too, Issei said. Everything has been so hectic that we haven't had time to stop and consider how much time has really passed, Kiba added. What does a graduation ceremony entail? Asked Zenobia. Forgive me if that's a stupid question, but I've never been to a normal school before.
Zenobia and I were taught at the church, Irina added.
While Rias sat behind her desk and Akino stood next to her, everyone else was seated at the couches or leaning against the walls. Rosweiss wasn't there. As a teacher, she couldn't just drop her work and come here, but that was fine. Naruto planned on letting her know about this meeting once they were back home. The graduation ceremony will consist of several parts, Rias informed her. The entry, the introduction, singing the national anthem, receiving our graduation certificates, introducing messages from our guests, sending a message from the graduating students, another message from the younger students to the graduating students, singing the school song, and the graduating students exiting.
The seniors will be spending the majority of their time practicing. Since I was selected as class representative, it will also be my job to grab our certificates and hand them out to the rest of my class. Sounds like a lot of work, Zenobia grumbled. Will your parents be coming? Asked Irina.
Rias froze for a moment at the mention of her parents, and her face turned just a bit pale as the blood drained from it. Well, they probably will. Her strained smile told Naruto she'd rather not have them attend, but she also knew she couldn't stop them from not attending. Even if she kept the graduation ceremony a secret from them, they would find out sooner or later, since her father and Searsex were both board members for the school.
You don't sound pleased by that, Kaneko said. Rias shrugged. You know how embarrassing my parents and brother can be.
No one disagreed with her words, not even Naruto, who actually liked her folks and brother. Searsex had a massive sister complex and her parents were so doting they would no doubt tell anyone willing to listen embarrassing stories about her. It almost made Naruto glad his parents couldn't attend his graduation. Almost. I wonder if they would be proud of me. What should we do in the meantime? Asked Naruto.
You'll be doing the same thing you always do, Rias said. Continue doing your jobs as devils, keep your eyes out for the Chaos Brigade, and keep training. That's really all we can do. Devil Ninja. The moon hung in the sky as Naruto stepped into the magic circle that would transport him to his next job. A soft red glow briefly lit the floor before the transportation magic did its work, teleporting him from his estate to the place of his job.
Heya, your devil for the day is here, huh? Hello. Naruto frowned when he realized there was no one present to greet him, which shouldn't have been possible because using those summoning seals required the presence of a human with strong desires. He looked around. The room he stood in was average for a middle-class citizen of Japan. It was a simple living room with wooden floorboards, a coffee table and couches placed in the center, and a TV situated against the wall.
Hello? Is anybody home? Naruto called out again. Once more, no one answered him. This place was emptier than a grave. With furrowed brows, Naruto debated the merits of searching the rest of the house or just leaving. The situation was taken out of his hands, however, when several magic circles appeared on the walls around him. He only had enough time to widen his eyes before the entire house erupted in a gout of flames. Devil Ninja. The explosion of the house rocked the buildings around it for miles. This home was placed within a small suburb of Kuo City. That normally meant everything within the vicinity would have been caught in the blast, but a barrier had been placed around the building to prevent that from happening. This entire space had been isolated inside of its own dimension. Nothing happening inside of it would affect the outside world. Two people stood on a building not far from where the explosion took place, their eyes not leaving the burning wreckage crashing to the ground. Both had their faces hidden behind curtains of black cloth. Their bodies were likewise hidden behind black clothing that was bulky enough to disguise their gender. Do you think we managed to get him? Asked the one on the left. Don't know. Sensei told us not to underestimate Ninja-sama under any circumstances, that he was super strong, but the one on the right trailed off. He's very gullible, the other added. Who is gullible now? Asked a voice behind them. The two leapt away from the voice in shock and turned around, throwing a pair of shuriken that Naruto deflected with a simple swipe of his hand. Neither of the two were able to see more than his afterimage as he blurred forward. The first to fall was the person who had first spoken. Naruto appeared before them with unprecedented speed, grabbed them by the face, and slammed them down onto his knee. A loud cracking sound echoed around them as the cloaked figure dropped to the ground like a sack of potatoes.
Naruto turned to the second figure as they created a number of hand seals. He frowned as he recognized several of those hand seals since they were identical to the ones used. Did that mean these people were shinobi like him? He grimaced before slicing out his hand. A blade of wind tore from his swing, traveled in a straight line, and would have bisected the second attacker if they hadn't replaced themselves with a log. After staring for a full half a second, Naruto turned around to look at where he had dropped the other one, but just as he expected, there was nobody there. He frowned for a moment before reaching out with his perceptions other than his eyes, but he couldn't find a trace of the two people who had attacked him.
A soft breeze blew over the roof. Naruto sweat a hand through his hair, then released a slow breath as the tension from the swift battle eased from his shoulders. Whoever had attacked him would probably not attack again, at least not for a while. It was clear to him they had been hoping he would die in the explosions.
Wily bastards, Naruto grumbled before looking at the sky. I guess it was too much to ask for just a few more days off. Devil Ninja. You were attacked. Are you okay? What happened? Who attacked you? Small trails of sweat ran down Naruto's face as Rias invaded his personal bubble, not that he had one, and looked him over from head to toe, back to front, with an expression that somehow combined rage with worry. It was rather adorable. I'm fine, Rias. As you can plainly see. And I don't know who attacked me. They were wearing masks that covered their whole face. Naruto placed his hand on Ria's shoulder and eased her back so she wasn't practically burying her face in his chest. He grinned. Relax. Deep breaths.
Rias took several deep breaths, then backed off, slowly, and sat back down on the couch opposite him.
They were in the living room with everyone else. The whole gang was sitting or standing around. There were only 2 couches and a few chairs. On a side note, Ophis had been sitting on his lap this time, and she gave an annoyed click of her tongue at being forced off her rightful place by Ria's sudden actions.
It's pretty bold of them to attack you, Roswise commented with her arms crossed. She sat on one of the chairs, left leg crossed over her right, expression furrowed. I mean, this can't be a random attack, right? They must know who you are and what you've accomplished. I can't believe anyone would be stupid enough to attack you unless they have a good reason.
Could it be those Chaos Brigade bastards? Asked Kaneko.
I doubt it. Revel cupped her chin with her right hand and narrowed her eyes. For starters, there's no way the Chaos Brigade could have infiltrated Kuo Academy. We've set up a special barrier and placed our people on patrol ever since the Magician faction tried to kidnap me.
While it wasn't necessarily true that the Chaos Brigade couldn't infiltrate Kuo, the possibility of it happening at this point in time was practically nil. The 3 factions alliance had upped their security and were constantly on the lookout for infiltration now. Several angels, devils, fallen, and even a few yokai from Kyoto were also living in the city now to prevent a repeat of what happened with the Magician faction. Naruto shifted a little as Ophis climbed back onto his lap. She wasn't in her smaller form, so she weighed a bit more than she did before. Once seated, the woman leaned back, pressing her lithe body against his chest. The warmth from her body radiated outward. I've always wondered, why is it that your weight doesn't remain constant when you transform? He asked her.
Did you think my weight would be constant? Ophis asked, tilting her head. As a human-shaped dragon, I am a true shapeshifter. I can take on any form and appearance, regardless of age, sex, and body type. Of course my weight would change based on my form. Oh, I guess that makes sense, he said with a nod.
While Naruto had become distracted by talking to Ophis, the others remained on topic. After all, an attack on one of them was not something they could take lightly no matter what. That was especially true when they didn't even know who their attacker was.
Rias cast Naruto a mildly annoyed glare, sighed, and said, "Does anyone have any ideas on what to do?"
We could always have Naruto travel with one of us, Irina suggested. Oh, we could have something like a buddy system. I don't think we need to worry that much, Naruto said before anyone else could. I mean, yeah, I was surprised by their sudden attack, but honestly, those dudes were wimps. I doubt they could take me on even if there were 1,000 of them. Don't underestimate them just because you made them retreat once, Rebel warned Naruto. You don't know who they are, so you don't know what kind of power they can bring to bear. This could have just been a probe to see how you responded to a dangerous situation. Next time, they might attack you with their full might.
Naruto shrugged. So long as I'm not facing a pantheon of gods, I think I'll be fine.
Speaking of gods, I received a message from Sirzex. The Hindu gods will be coming to Kuo before my graduation to discuss an alliance with us. Rias smoothly changed the subject. As residents of Kuo, we will be expected to meet with them.
By Hindu gods, you mean like Shiva and Indra, right? Asked Issei.
Those aren't the only gods in the Hindu pantheon, silly, Akino said. There's also Mahabali, Brahma, Vishnu, Varuna, Hanuman, Ganesha, Vairashana, and Prahlada. I've heard there are 33 million Hindu gods.
The Hindu pantheon was one of the more interesting and oldest from what Naruto understood. There were quite a few very powerful deities within the pantheon. But while all these deities had complex personalities, they were often viewed as aspects of the same ultimate reality called Brahman. Naruto didn't understand much about them. He only knew they were a large pantheon who was fervently worshipped by the people in India and was the third largest religion in the entire world.
The Hindu pantheon is also the current strongest pantheon in existence. Rias continued where Akino left off. Indra, Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu are all among the top 10 strongest beings in the world. Naruto perked up a little. He believed he remembered them talking about this before, but now that it was brought up again, he found himself interested in these Hindu gods. They sounded like they would be a good fight. Naruto was no valley. But even he enjoyed pushing his limits by fighting strong opponents, especially now that he was training to increase his strength. He wondered if maybe one of them would like to spar with him. They'll be arriving in the next few days. I want you all to be on your best behavior when they arrive. Is that understood? Asked Rias, looking at everyone in her peerage and those few who weren't, like Rebel and Irina.
Yes, ma'am, they all said in unison. Devil Ninja.
While Rias was preparing for her graduation, she left Naruto in charge of preparing to receive the Hindu gods, which meant he was doubling down and working harder than ever to make sure the meeting went smoothly. This meant he was mostly focusing on security. It would leave a bad impression if the Hindu gods arrived for peace talks, only to be attacked.
The meeting was not going to take place at Kuo Academy like the last big meeting between powerful factions. It had been decided that doing so would be dangerous. There was also the graduation ceremony to consider. Because the meeting was not taking place at Kuo Academy, Naruto did not discuss this matter with the student council, something he would have usually done. Instead, he worked with the angels, devils, and fallen living in the city to select a place that would suit the purpose of this meeting. All that was left to do was meet with the Hindu gods. Finally done. Sirzex should be stopping by soon, right? Asked Naruto as he stretched his arms above his head. He brought his hands down several satisfying pops later.
Rosweiss winced at the sound his back made, but she dutifully looked at her clipboard before nodding and said, yes. He should be here any minute now.
Guess that means there's not enough time for a quickie.
Just what is it you're asking for, Eep? Rosweiss's question turned into a squeak as Naruto pushed back his chair, grabbed her hand, and pulled her into his lap. Her soft bottom pressed against his thighs and crotch as she came to rest on him. It was an electric feeling. Naruto. This is highly inappropriate. Is not. You're mine. Aren't you, Rosweiss?
Well, yes, but then there's nothing inappropriate about this. We haven't been intimate for a while now because of everything that's happened. Give me some time with you.
That, Naru, too. While Rosweiss said what they were doing was inappropriate, she did nothing to get herself out of Naruto's lap. Her butt squirmed against his crotch as he slipped his hand inside of her suit and began rubbing her smooth stomach. There was an undeniable softness there that turned him on. She moaned as he swirled his fingers around her belly button, though that sound was soon cut off when he pressed his lips to hers. Rosweiss had come a long way since they first started going out. The proof was in her actions. She grabbed the back of Naruto's head and pulled him closer as they kissed. Her warm, wet tongue slipped into his mouth and entangled with his, sending electric arcs of bliss shooting through him. Naruto would have liked nothing more than to slip a hand down her panties and stimulate her to an orgasm, but he knew they didn't have time for that, so he contented himself with her lips and breasts. He'd already pushed up her bra. It was riding high just below her collarbone, exposing her large pink nipples. MMMPH, MMMRRRRPH. The muffled moans Rosweiss made as he stroked her nipples with gentle movements caused the pitch tent in his pants to strain. She had such a beautiful voice. He wished he could hear more. He wanted to hear her crying out his name as he brought her to the height of pleasure. Now that he was thinking about it, maybe fooling around like this just before he was supposed to meet with Sears was a bad idea. Oh ho ho ho. Look at that passion. I never expected you to be so bold, Rosweiss, a cackling voice said.
Rosweiss's eyes widened in shock. She tried to leap out of Naruto's lap, but he had a firm hold on the woman. As the chair shook with her struggles, Naruto sighed and turned a minor glare on the old lady who had arrived. She was dressed in her usual deep blue robe and had the same fearless look he remembered. Gondol, I didn't know you'd be coming here, he said.
I came with Sears. Gondol shrugged. Ever since the remainder of the Norse gods settled here, I have been doing what I can to help. Sears came to me and asked if I could act as his bodyguard, not that the man needs it.
Grandmother, you came here with Sears? Rosweiss said, eyes widening in shock. She seemed to have forgotten that she was on Naruto's lap. Gondol nodded. Correct. He's waiting in the living room. That cute blonde girl, Revel, is entertaining him.
Guess that means we're out of time, Naruto sighed. How unfortunate. Now I won't get to fool around with Rosweiss anymore.
Naruto, don't say things like that in front of my grandma. What? Your grandmother is clearly pleased to see how close we are, isn't that right?
While Rosweiss looked like she might explode like an overinflated balloon, Naruto looked calmly at Gondol, who was wearing a wide grin and looked like she might start cackling. He was actually expecting her to go, hee, or something to that effect. That was how most witches in anime laughed. That's right. I'm very pleased to see how close you two have become, she confirmed.
Granny, Rosweiss covered her face with her hands. Her ears were a vibrant red.
Deciding not to tease her anymore, Naruto let Rosweiss get off his lap and rearranged his pants before standing up himself. He was still aroused. It wasn't a big deal, however. Naruto had learned how to deal with this issue. He led Gondol and Rosweiss back into the living room, where Sears was sitting on the couch with a broad smile as a somewhat nervous Revel brought him tea and sweets. It looked like she had baked muffins this time. The mild scent of almonds filled the air, letting him know what kind of muffins they were. Aniki, Naruto said. Ototo, Sears said as he set his teacup down, stood up, and opened his arms. Naruto was about to hug his brother-in-law, but Rosweiss and Revel both blocked him. He looked down at the two with a frown. They, however, merely gave him a stern glare. Oh, no. There is no way I'm letting myself be subjected to that nightmare again, Rosweiss said. Once is enough, Revel added. Naruto's cheeks swelled like a chipmunk's as he took in air. You two would stop a man from hugging his brother. Of course we would, they said at the same time. Yeah. Well, you're too late. What? Revel and Rosweiss grew wide-eyed when the Naruto in front of them disappeared in a puff of smoke. When did Naruto replace himself with a shadow clone? How had they not noticed? Feeling a sense of foreboding, the two spun around in an attempt to stop Naruto and Sears from completing their hug, but it was too late. Fire and brimstone spewed from cracks that appeared in the ground. Volcanoes were erupting as they rose from the earth like titans rising from the depths of Tartarus. The roof had disappeared from the house and now revealed a blood-red sky with smoke instead of clouds wafting in the air. In the middle of this hellish landscape were Naruto and Sears.
They were hugging. It is good to see you, Otuto. You too, Aniki. I'm glad to see you are doing well. Oh, God. My eyes, Rosweiss screamed. I want to look away, but I can't, Revel said in a horrified whisper.
This is interesting. While Gondol didn't look like she was as affected as the other two, she was still in a state of shock, her eyes bulging from their sockets.
Let it be known that the only one who can stop these two from doing this was the one and only king of the Gremory peerage.
Unfortunately, she was busy preparing for graduation and couldn't be there to stop this from happening.
Poor Rosweiss and Revel. Devil Ninja. Immediately after Naruto's and Sears' horrifying display of brotherly love, the group now consisting of Naruto, Sears, Revel, Rosweiss, Gondol, and Kiba left and met up with Michael and Azazel at Kuo Academy before taking a limousine into the city proper. The limo was one of the nicer ones. A long bench stretched across one end and curved around the back. This allowed all 8 of them to sit together and still have room left over. There was also a cooler filled with refreshments for anyone who wanted them, and though Naruto was still a minor and therefore not technically allowed to drink, he had a glass of sake anyway.
Old enough to kill. Old enough to drink. Which Hindu gods are coming? Asked Naruto.
We will be meeting with the Trimurti, Searsex explained. Naruto pushed his tongue into his cheek. Those are the three main gods, right?
That's right, young Naruto, Michael said with a soft smile. The Trimurti is the triple deity of supreme divinity in Hinduism. Brahma the creator, Vishnu the preserver, and Shiva the destroyer. They are the three most powerful gods within the Hindu pantheon, which is why they are coming to meet with us.
At that moment, Michael didn't look like an archangel so much as a supremely pretty businessman. His pure white suit contained gold accents that complemented his long blonde hair. His clean and crisp appearance made a clear contrast with Azazel's messier one. The former Governor General of the Fallen wore a black suit, but it lacked the clean creases of Michael's. On that note, Searsex was wearing a dark red suit that suited him quite well.
Naruto thought these three looked like mobsters. They would have been perfect for the role of the good, the bad, and the sloppy. We should remain on our guard during this meet and greet, Azazel said as the limo took a turn down one of many streets. A lot of people were pointing at them as they passed, but no one could see past the tinted windows.
Do you suspect they will try to take advantage of us, Lord Azazel? Asked Rosweiss with a frown.
Azazel looked out the window and said nothing for a moment, though he did eventually speak. I'm not too worried about Brahma or Shiva. Brahma has always been a good and wise god, and while Shiva certainly scares the crap out of me, he's not really the type to start something without a good reason. He generally focuses on other pursuits. So the one we have to watch out for is Indra. Revel murmured. I heard he is a very arrogant god and someone very few people trust.
Indra is an incredibly sarcastic individual, Searsex informed them. And yes, he is arrogant. We have reason to suspect he was supporting Cao Cao and his hero faction from behind the scenes, though we have no real proof. That jerk claims he was being manipulated by the hero faction, but I don't believe it, Azazel said with a snort. A god being manipulated by a human? It's inconceivable, and Indra would never admit it if he had actually been manipulated. I can't help but feel like he has something sinister up his sleeves. I guess that means we should keep our ears to the ground, Kiba said.
That's an understatement if I ever heard one, Azazel replied. It sounded like this Indra guy would be the one Naruto needed to watch out for. As he resolved himself to keep an eye on Indra, they arrived at the airport.
Kuo City's airport was quite quaint. The main building was not very large, but it was built in a semblance of the Tokyo International Airport. It had a very asymmetrical aesthetic and was surrounded on one side by a large fence where people could watch the airplanes come and go. Quite a few kids were standing there with their parents and pointing at the airplanes as they came in.
Naruto walked alongside Searsex, who was in the lead. Behind them was Michael and Azazel, and even further behind was Kiba, Revel, Rosweiss, and Gondal. Their group drew quite a bit of attention. A few people stopped and turned to watch them. In most cases, Naruto would have assumed it was because of all the beauties he was surrounded by, but that was not the case this time. It was likely because of how eclectic their group looked and the fact that none of them were of Japanese descent. Foreigners were not always welcome in Japan. They arrived at the station where the airplane containing the Hindu gods was located and found that people were already being disgorged from the plane. Among them were two individuals who immediately caught Naruto's attention. The first was a man with a buzz cut. He had greenish-brown hair, wore circular sunglasses, an aloha t-shirt, and had a jewel around his neck. While his clothing made him look very much like a tourist arriving from Hawaii, there was something inherently masculine and powerful about him. It was more than the way he was built. Yeah, the guy had broad shoulders, powerful arms, and a thick chest, but it was the way he carried himself that really struck Naruto. The dude practically oozed arrogance out of every pore. This must be Indra. He is quite powerful. You can feel it, can't you? Naruto nodded. He's even stronger than Aniki. Well, look it is, the man said with an arrogant grin as he and the other man walked over to their group. Little Azazel, Little Michael, and Searsex. I didn't expect the three leaders of the three factions alliance to come all this way to greet us. Even the way he spoke was arrogant. It contained a condescension that couldn't be masked. The tone of his voice made it clear he was looking down on everyone and everything. Searsex was the one who stepped forward, smiling slightly without a hint of being offended by the man's arrogance. Lord Indra, Lord Vishnu, it is good to see that you are both hearty and hale, though I would expect nothing less. I hope the trip here was pleasant. Ha ha,
It was good. Say what you will about humans, they know how to make transportation comfortable, Indra said.
Thank you for your hospitality, Sears. I'm looking forward to our meeting, the other man said.
Unlike Indra, who acted extremely boisterous and arrogant, this man appeared calm and wise, though he also didn't have much of a presence. He had tanned skin, a mark on his forehead, and tan robes to complement his skin tone. A full beard sat on his face. Naruto thought it made him look like a kind uncle or grandfather. And this one must be Brahma. He is also strong, though I believe Indra is stronger.
Naruto nodded as he quietly watched the proceedings. He knew this was not his place to speak. Brahma, it is good to see you, Michael said with a smile. We have been greatly anticipating your arrival. And we have been looking forward to meeting with you all, Brahma admitted. The state of the world is in chaos. It is more than just the Chaos Brigade causing troubles now. We've heard rumor that several pantheons have been destroyed and a number of gods have rebelled against their own. The situation has become such that we can no longer ignore it.
I agree, Azazel said. That's why we proposed this meeting, after all.
Indeed. As the two groups spoke, Naruto realized something that must have occurred to the others as well. Sears, Michael, and Azazel looked around for a moment, frowned, and turned their attention to the two Hindu gods.
Did Lord Shiva not come with you? Asked Sears. Huh. That guy left before we even got on the plane, Indra said, his eyes tightening even as he feigned civility. I suspect he's been in Kuo for some time now. Don't know where he is though. That guy is always doing his own thing. A sense of tension ran through Azazel, Michael, and Sears. The way their backs suddenly tightened was a dead giveaway. However, they remained outwardly calm. So I see. In that case, I suppose we should look for him. Sears turned to Naruto. Sorry, Naruto, but could I ask you to find Lord Shiva? Your ability to sense the power of others makes you uniquely suited to finding him.
Oh ho. So this little brat is Naruto Uzumaki, huh? Indra turned to Naruto before he could answer. Sears cupped a hand to his chin, and nodded several times. I can see now why you have been the talk of the godly world. You're packing quite a bit of power inside of you, though, that's not really your power, is it? Something is sealed in you. How interesting. You've gained my interest, brat.
Another god is interested in me, huh? Well, you wouldn't be the first, and you won't be the last. Naruto didn't bother paying Indra any more attention as he turned to Sears. Anyway, you just want me to find Shiva, right? I'll head out and meet up with you at the hotel they'll be staying at once I found him. I'll come with you, Ravel offered, walking up to him.
Rosweiss looked like she was also going to offer to come with him, but Gondel held her back, shaking her head when her granddaughter turned to give her a petulant glare. The commander was clear. She needed to remain with them and provide an escort for the group. Sure, Naruto agreed to let her come. He reached out and grabbed her hand, then turned and led her back the way they had come. Devil Ninja. Indra watched Naruto and his little blonde girlfriend leave with great interest. He'd heard a lot about Naruto Uzumaki, a man with so much power he could fight an entire pantheon of gods to a standstill. Those rumors might have been exaggerated, but the reports he had received on what the brat had accomplished were not. That was the kind of power he wanted in his camp. The question is, how do I get it? I've gotta admit, Sears, you have an interesting brat in your group. I don't know if I should attempt to recruit him or kill him before he becomes a threat, Indra said with a laugh. While Azazel grimaced and looked angry, Sears merely smiled like he wasn't bothered by the threatening words. He said, I would have to warn you against trying something with Naruto. Not only is he going to become my brother-in-law eventually, he is also dating Ophis. Indra blinked. Then hummed. So the Ouroboros dragon is sleeping with that brat. I didn't realize a genderless dragon could take an interest in sex.
Sears shrugged. She probably didn't care until Naruto came along.
Indra already knew most of the details concerning Naruto since he had taken an interest in the kid ever since his battle against the Greek pantheon, but his knowledge on the brat's relationship with Ophis had only been threadbare at best. He knew Ophis was living with Naruto. He just hadn't known the extent of their relationship.
This new information was very interesting. Well, whatever. Why don't you show us to our accommodations now? We can discuss what to do about the Chaos Brigade and everything else later. Indra decided not to focus on Naruto right now. He wanted that power in his camp when the time came, but he was patient. He could wait until the right opportunity presented itself.
Devil Ninja. While Kuo was not a large city, that didn't mean it would be easy finding one person amongst the population. There were still several 100,000 people living there. How are we going to find Lord Shiva? Asked Ravel.
The two of them were walking hand in hand down one of the many streets, looking just like any other couple. Of course, because they were both blonde-haired and blue-eyed, they drew a lot of attention. A few people were whispering behind their backs. He heard words like, Yankee, being bandied about and made sure to memorize those faces.
They would so be getting pranked when he got the chance.
Don't worry about that. I can find him, Naruto assured her. You mean I can find him? You can't do squat right now.
You, me, it's all the same. Your victories are also my victories. What a sophist answer. So have you found him? Ha. Yeah, I found him. That Shiva is suppressing a great deal of his power, but that's like trying to condense a star into a light bulb. He's radiating power like an out-of-control bonfire.
Naruto nodded and listened as Kurama began giving him instructions. He tugged on Ravel's hand to get her to follow him. Come on. I know where he is, he said. Already? Ravel asked, stunned.
Yep. He grinned at Ravel's shocked expression and led her further into the city, away from the airport. As they left the airport and stepped on one of several main thoroughfares, Naruto hailed down a passing taxi, opened the door for Ravel, and then climbed in himself. Where to? Asked the driver. Take us to this address please, Naruto said as he wrote something in a sheet of paper and handed it to the man. The driver looked at the paper, nodded, and placed it on the dashboard before typing it into his phone, which currently had a GPS map activated.
As the taxi began moving, slowly picking up speed, Ravel cinched her seatbelt and looked at Naruto, who was staring out the window. He turned when he felt her gaze on him. She shifted her attention away, but he just chuckled and placed a hand over hers.
How did you find Lord Shiva so fast? Asked Ravel, unable to hide her curiosity and eager to ignore her embarrassment. Kurama, Naruto said simply. Oh. Ravel's eyes widened. As an entity of pure power, Kurama was very sensitive to the power of others. Of course, he was better at sensing negative emotions than raw energy, but his sensing ability had expanded after becoming a 10-tailed fox. Naruto didn't know if this was a power he gained from Utsutsuki Kagaya or something brought forth naturally by his increased power. Either way, it was proving incredibly useful right now. Naruto could also sense life using Sage Mode, but at the moment, he was trying not to use it. Almost 40% of his power had returned to him since he learned the secret to Yami's increased power. The last thing he wanted to do was risk losing what he gained by being stupid. The area where the taxi dropped them off at was one of the busiest sections of the city, the shopping district. Home to dozens of stores, there was something for everyone in this section of the city, including those of the so-called otaku community.
Naruto had spent quite a bit of time here. Rias Gremory was a huge nerd and Japanophile, so she had introduced Naruto to her favorite stores, which contained either Japanese paraphernalia or otaku goods like anime, manga, figures, and light novels. The store Naruto directed Ravel to was, in fact, that same otaku store that Rias had taken him to several times in the past. It was called Solaris Japan. Flashy signs signified what the shop sold, including several posters and cardboard figures near the front. Because of recent complaints from the Japanese government, all the lewd posters had been taken down, and now there were only posters from some of the more popular anime like Evangelion, Fate Stay Night, and My Hero Academia. A blast of cold air hit Naruto as he walked in with Ravel, though it was easy to ignore. They were greeted by several aisles worth of otaku goods. There were aisles dedicated almost entirely to figures, others for anime, or video games, and there were other large sections for light novels, posters, and so on. Naruto would usually spend his time in the anime section. This time, he did not. He traveled over to the light novel section, where he found someone browsing through the selection. The person browsing through the light novels looked like a young boy in middle school. He was an oddly handsome boy with aristocratic features, greenish-black hair that contained a bluish tint, and sharp eyes. His eyes were probably his strongest feature. They appeared bottomless, like someone could fall into them and never get back out. He wore the simple clothing of a schoolboy. The navy blue Gakurin and Sumeri fit him surprisingly well, though Naruto wondered what a god was doing wearing a school uniform. Fashion statement. Taste. Anyone else would have shivered in fear after catching a glimpse of his unfathomable eyes. Ravel did shiver in fear. Naruto.
He just walked up to the boy.
Yo, you Shiva? He asked. The boy looked up from his book and gazed at Naruto, who held his gaze without faltering. A strange pressure emanated from this boy. It was easy for Naruto to ignore, however. The strength of this boy was far greater than any opponent he had ever faced, but Naruto had never been the type to falter in the face of overwhelming power. I am, the boy said at last, smiling. He seemed pleased by something, or perhaps amused. And you must be Naruto Uzumaki. It is a pleasure to meet you.
Devil Ninja. Naruto and Revel sat across from the boy proclaiming himself to be Shiva. He looked nothing like what Naruto would have expected from a god. Then again, Ophis was considered a god and she had been a lowly when they first met, so his expectations of what a god looked like were heavily skewed to begin with. Even he recognized that much. In either event, the power Shiva emitted even when not doing anything was undeniable. Can I ask what you were doing, Lord Shiva? Asked Revel. I thought we were supposed to pick up you, Lord Brahma, and Lord Indra at the airport, but Lord Indra claimed you were already in Kuo.
Revel had been quite nervous when they first ran across Shiva, but his appearance and calm demeanor helped her settle down. It helped that she couldn't feel his power like Naruto could. She might have become a nervous wreck if she could.
Ah. Well, Lord Indra doesn't seem to like me very much, so I decided it would be best to avoid him until the meeting, Shiva replied with casual nonchalance. He shrugged, then smiled mischievously as he added, the last thing we need to do is begin fighting inside a city that isn't ours. While the words were polite and mild, the meaning behind them was clear. He was basically saying he didn't want to accidentally destroy this city by quarreling with Indra. Aren't you more powerful than Indra, though? Asked Naruto. I feel like you could destroy him if you wanted to.
Shiva's eyes glimmered as Naruto said this, but his reply was still mild. Of course I could. Indra doesn't have much strength on his own. However, we have a lot of followers, and so we cannot fight between each other, or we might begin to lose those followers.
So it's a matter of keeping your believers from splintering, Revel said. Quite so. Shiva scooped some ice cream onto his spoon, slipped it inside his mouth, and hummed in delight. For whatever reason, after discovering Shiva at the otaku store, Naruto had found himself and Revel taking the boy out to get ice cream. The shop they had chosen was actually a maid cafe called Cafe Cuz. It was the kind of cafe where women cosplayed as various anime characters. Their waitress had been a young woman dressed as Asuka Langley Soryu from a certain mecha anime that Naruto would never watch again. Not only had she been decked in the traditional plug suit, but she had acted very much like the proud and arrogant character she was dressed as.
While Shiva had gotten himself an ice cream that looked large enough to feed 4 people, Naruto had bought himself a simple coffee. It was not black. Filling the coffee was a light amount of cream, 2 cubes of sugar, and some kind of vanilla sweetener. There was also a depiction of a certain pirate king wannabe floating on the foam. Revel was eating a Danish. Mind if I ask what you were doing at an otaku store? Asked Naruto.
What anyone else would be doing at an otaku store, of course, replied the nonchalant Shiva.
So you're a fan of anime? I suppose you could say that.
Shiva paused, took a bite of his ice cream, and smiled as he continued. It is more that I am interested in learning more about other cultures. Japan is a very interesting place. I'm not sure if you know this, but they are mass hated by other Asian countries due to the war crimes they committed during World War II. However, ever since the end of the war, Japan has completely rewritten themselves into a peace-loving country with a love for cute things. Otaku culture is merely an extension of that.
And so you wanted to learn more by learning about otaku culture, Naruto said with a nod.
You can learn a lot by looking at what a country considers low-brow culture, Shiva said, shrugging.
This is a fascinating discussion, but I think we should escort you to your hotel, Lord Shiva, Revel said. Yes, I suppose you are right. Very well. Let me finish my ice cream first, Shiva replied with an easy smile. Despite having barely gotten a third finished, Shiva somehow managed to eat the rest in less time than it took to blink. Revel actually rubbed her eyes and looked again like she couldn't believe it. Naruto would have been in the same boat, but he knew there were a lot of strange things in this world and didn't let it bother him. After that, Naruto and Revel escorted Shiva to his hotel.
Devil Ninja. The night was late and Naruto was once again coming home from a job. He had finished it easily enough, though in truth he didn't really need to do these jobs anymore. A chilly breeze blew through the streets as he walked home instead of teleporting like normal. If anyone had asked, he would have said it was because tonight was a nice night and he wanted to enjoy the cool weather, but the truth was he wanted to present himself as an irresistible target for whoever had attacked him last time. Naruto didn't think those people who tried to blow him up would give up just because they failed once.
We're being followed. Naruto looked down at the tiny fox walking by his side. The fox looked like a very small Kurama. His torso looked almost human, though it was covered in bright orange fur. His front paws were likewise humanoid in shape, with 5 fingers that could form hand seals just as well as human hands. Blood-red eyes gazed up at him, surrounded by black rings. He only had one tail sprouting from his tailbone.
I'm not surprised you sensed them first, Naruto said. I don't know who these people are, but they are very good at concealing their presence. Even their energy emissions are minimal. It's almost like they've had ninja training. HMPH. I suspect they have had something similar to ninja training. Kurama snorted as he walked along, tail swaying from side to side. Their movements remind me of those Anbu guys you used to give the runaround when you were a brat.
Is that so? Naruto muttered with some agitation in his voice. He stopped walking, scratched his head, and sighed. Well, I guess there's nothing to do but get this over with. In a much louder voice, he said, I already know you're following me. Come on out so I can get this over with already.
Nothing seemed to happen at first, but then nearly a dozen people leapt at him from every conceivable angle. One pair leapt from a tree on his left, another came down from the roofs to his right, 2 had concealed themselves inside of an illusion and leapt at him from behind, and another 2 appeared underneath his very feet. Naruto leapt into the air and flexed his fingers. The 2 who had tried to grab him from below suddenly found themselves completely tangled within ninja wires, their bodies wrapped up in twisted bondage. Silver threads gleamed in the moonlight as the 2 black-clad figures struggled against the wires, which only made them tighten more, making it even harder for them to escape.
There were still half a dozen others coming at him, so Naruto found himself with little time to pay those 2 any more attention. He let them drop to the road like a sack of bricks. Spinning around, he extended his foot in a kick that caught the lead figure coming from the left in the face. The figure spun around as he slammed into his friend. Then a cloud of smoke exploded from the 2, engulfing the road in a smokescreen.
Kawarimi. No, this is different. Naruto leapt on the roof of a house and found himself engaged in hand-to-hand combat with 3 of the assassins attacking him. He blocked a strike from one with his forearm, then used the resulting momentum to push himself further away and gain distance. Another figure came up behind him. Naruto heard the swishing sound of something being swung, ducked low, planted his hands on the tiles, and struck out with a foot. A loud grunt followed by the dull sound of impact precluded Naruto's opponent being sent hurtling through the air.
That figure tried to flip around and land on his feet, but Naruto once more used ninja wire to entangle him. His opponent fell to the ground and began flopping like a fish out of water.
That was 3 down, which meant he had 5 more to go. One of the assassins landed on the ground and went through 3 hand seals. Naruto once again narrowed his eyes as 1 became 3. 2 of them were simple clones, however.
Are you really trying to fool me with clones? Idiot, don't underestimate me, Lariat? Using a skill he picked up from a certain killer bee, Naruto extended his arm and slammed it into the real assailant's chest. The figure's eyes bulged as they gasped. Then they were blown away, flying off the roof and striking the ground hard. Naruto paid no more attention to them as he turned and adopted an open fighting stance.
A wall of shuriken and kunai came soaring at him. Naruto clapped his hands together. Chakra burst in front of him as a powerful wall of wind solidified. The projectile weapons struck the shield but were unable to penetrate. With another clap, the wind wall turned into a tornado that slammed into 2 of the remaining ninja, blowing them clean off their feet and making them strike a tree with enough force to tear it right out of the ground.
It seems you are the only 2 left, Naruto said as he turned to the last 2 assailants. How about you both just quietly give up?
The 2 looked at each other, and Naruto decided not to rush them, buffing his nails on his pants before blowing on them. He had time.
Naruto assumed the 2 would try to escape. He was a little surprised when, after nodding to each other, they tossed several projectiles at him. Then used a variation of the shadow clone jutsu to multiply the number of projectiles. A wind wall once more appeared to block the attack, but then both assailants spewed fire from their mouths, which struck the wall and ignited it.
Clicking his tongue, Naruto dismissed the wind wall, summoned a pair of kunai to his hands, and began blocking the projectiles as they came. Clang 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 clang. The sound of steel striking steel rang out around the neighborhood, though not a soul came out to see what was causing such a ruckus. Naruto frowned as he moved his hands so fast they blurred. Streaks of silver flashed through the night before him. Not a single projectile made it through his defense. However, he noticed the pair were now trying to grab their comrades and slip away. HMPH. As if I would let that happen. Before they could leave, a single tail extended to incredible lengths and wrapped around them. The pair struggled against the tail. One of them even tried jabbing a kunai into the seemingly soft fur, but they became surprised when the weapon merely bounced off what felt like hardened steel. Thanks, Kurama, Naruto said as he dropped to the street.
You're getting sloppy, Naruto. You'd have never let such weaklings escape before.
Naruto shrugged. Guess I'm out of practice. He walked up to Kurama and looked at the people he laid flat. Now what to do with these guys? I suppose I could just kill them. It might be better than letting a potential threat live.
Ah, wait, Ninja-sama. Do not kill them, Dagazaru.
At the sound of the familiar voice, Naruto turned to find an angel dressed in the all-black clothing of a ninja.
Ninja in this world were a lot different than the ninja in Naruto's world.
The basic color of their uniform was dark blue. Black was never used among ninja because it would have stood out in the dim light of the moon. Dark blue blended better at night. Hidden underneath their traditional long-sleeved uniform was chain hemp. Their leggings were baggy because they had several weapons hidden inside like kunai, shuriken, and a traditional short sword. A thick pair of tabis were worn on their feet to dull the sound of footsteps. This archangel was wearing clothes just like that, which Naruto thought looked absolutely ridiculous. Who had ever heard of an archangel ninja? Metatron. Naruto wore a bright smile that was so wide his eyes were forced closed. Are these ninja yours? That is correct, Ninja-sama. I received special permission from Michael-sama to train my own ninja squad, Dagazaru. These are all ninja I am training currently. Naruto nodded as Metatron puffed out his chest in pride. He seemed rather pleased with his accomplishment. So I see. And I am assuming these ninja of yours attacked me as part of their training. That is correct, Dagazaru, Metatron confirmed. My ninja currently are not very strong or well versed in the ninja arts. I'm training them right now to mask themselves and learn how to set traps. I thought having you as their opponent would accelerate their training, though they were not supposed to attack this time and instead just observe you. Naruto didn't tighten his hands into fists or give any outward indication of what he felt. He kept his smile plastered firmly on his face as he walked over to Metatron, who seemed oblivious to his predicament.
I see. And how is their training coming along?
Oh, it is coming along quite well now, Dagazaru. It was very slow going at first, but ever since I decided to pit them against you, they have been improving dramatically. I suspect they will be ready to deploy within the next few weeks. That's good to hear. Good to hear indeed. But, how do I put this? I'm not too pleased about being used as a training dummy without my knowledge. Well, that is just, we couldn't let you know what was happening or it would have defeated the purpose. I needed you to think they were actual enemies and come at them with the intent to kill so they could grow. You understand, right?
Understand my ass? Naruto barrage. Yeah, I'm sorry, Dagazaru.
Devil Ninja. Naruto woke up with a groan the next morning as the feeling of something wet and rough trailed down his stomach. His head felt fuzzy because of last night, damn that Metatron. He blinked several times after coming to. Then he groaned again when that electric feeling shot pleasure from his groin to his brain. He looked down. He couldn't see much more than a lump hidden under the covers, but he pulled it aside to reveal Kaneko rubbing herself against him as she licked his chest and stomach. One of her hands was buried between her legs. Juice leaked down her thighs as she furiously rubbed herself. It was such an erotic sight that Naruto became hard within an instant. Rias and Irina were currently sleeping in his bed, one on his left and the other on his right. While Rias was completely and totally nude, Irina wore a cute nightgown that went all the way down to her bare feet. It was a pink gown with white accents and emphasized her large chest. She currently had a hold of his left arm. Rias had his right. Kaneko, if you keep doing that, I know what you'll do, Kaneko interrupted him. Why do you think I'm doing it? Good point. Naruto would have said more, but Kaneko had reached his crotch. He sucked in a breath as she grabbed him with her free hand and began rubbing her face against his length. A shiver of ecstasy went through him as the girl seemed to inhale his scent. Such a thick, strong scent, she murmured with half-lidded golden eyes. I can't get enough of it.
Has Kuroka been teaching you more bedroom arts? That sounds like something she would say, NNGG.
Don't talk about my sister right now, or I will crush your nutsack like a grape, Kaneko threatened, squeezing him for emphasis. He didn't think she would actually do that since